call the August 29th of the Mount Vernon City School District Board of Education to order. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Trustee Williams, Trustee Russo,
Present.
Trustee Torres, Trustee Zamore,
Present.
Trustee McGowan, Trustee Ning, Trustee Jaros, Trustee White,
Present.
Trustee Saunders, quorum is present. First item on the agenda this evening is communications from the public. There is no legal requirement to recognize public comment at meetings of the Board of Education. However, the Board recognizes the critical importance of community discourse and involvement in the education of Mount Vernon's children, and accordingly, members of the public are invited to speak at each regularly scheduled board meeting, subject to the terms of board policy. Speakers must register in advance by no later than 4 p.m. on the date of the meeting by contacting the district clerk in person at 165 North Columbus Avenue, by phone at 914-665-5235, or via email at rmccormick@mtvernoncsd.org. The board welcomes all respectful comment, whether praise or criticism. However, identifying and criticizing a specific student, parent, teacher, administrator, or other Mount Vernon education official or employee is strictly prohibited. Any such complaint must be presented and addressed through the proper administrative channels. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak, with up to 1 additional minute that may be used for the speaker to summarize and conclude their remarks. If appropriate, board trustees and/or the superintendent or other staff members at their discretion, at the superintendent's discretion, may respond to the speaker's remarks. Our first speaker this evening is Elias Goodside. Is Joan Horton. Gregory Quells. Oh. Our first speaker is Elias Goodside.
I'm sorry I'm late, but I thought it was going to be later. I believe I have an email that says something about 7:30. I'm here on behalf of Neighbors That Care. Neighbors That Care is an organization in the Vernon Heights section of Mount Vernon, and for 14 years we did a garden at Graham School. And you guys did a beautiful job renovating that playground. And the several people that you called from Neighbors That Care had asked me to participate in presenting to you, and I hope they are coming. We're wondering if we've been locked out of participating. The only part of the playground that hasn't been maintained is the garden. In order for the young people to use the playground, they have to climb in through open spaces, but they're not allowed to use the garden or the playground unless they trespass. I understand the place is still under construction and you're doing a beautiful job, but I hope it still remains a public facility. The public school was built by public dollars with the public participation. And in fact, I spent 20 years advocating for that building and a lot of buildings in Mount Vernon, and was kind of hoping that this was a turnaround event that was going to bring the community in to participate with your blessing. We recently had a mortal killing across the street from the playground on the 300 block of South Columbus Avenue. And historically, that was the genesis of Neighbors That Care. In 2003, there were 3 murders on that 300 block. One of them was on the playground of a young person. And the PTA raised $34,000 for a playground. that you replaced this year when you renovated the building. But there's a history of participation in the community. And even though some people might say, well, Neighbors That Care had no impact, while we were on the playground and while we were participating in the 300 block activity, there were no other shootings on that block until this year. I don't know, maybe as Mr. Zamore says, one thing has nothing to do with the other, but we were there. This week, we're going to meet with the pastor of the church that's in the middle of the block. I had suggested to Mr. Zamore that perhaps if you have participation and buy-ins from the community, maybe we'll watch the playground differently. I just want to say to you that I appreciate the wonderful investment that you put into our neighborhood. I hope the intention is to open it up to the community because the kids are there whether it's locked or not. And I hope that you permit us after 14 years of effort to participate. And if you're going to lock Graham School or the Southside schools, I'm wondering if that's how you're going to treat all the playgrounds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodside.
Hi, Mr. Goodside. Just a couple comments. Yes, we did have a conversation, and I always appreciate conversations with you. And certainly, it's my intention to have some discourse with the city, and actually, I have had that discourse with the mayor in terms of the property across the street. The church, I believe, owns the entire property across the street, and it's always it's a place that's always filled with litter and filled with people hanging outside, drinking, loitering, and so it doesn't surprise me when I heard that someone did lose their life there. I encourage your continued participation, especially when it comes to the gardens, and I had no clue that you had not yet participated. Actually, I thought that you guys were already using the garden. Mr. Felicio's here before us. Maybe he could give a word in terms of any type of communication that you guys had. I believe you had some communication with, oh no, that was regarding removing the worms, I believe, in the soil. But I don't know, in terms of what else you may need to...
Well, I thought we had your permission. Thought I had the superintendent's permission.
Can I just interject, please? You and I had a conversation, Mr. Goodside, and I told you I would speak to the district, and you were going to speak to the church, and we can get together and make arrangements for you guys to have access to the garden, correct?
No.
Yes.
The problem is, maybe it's just bureaucratic, but I'm told to speak to the principal. The principal tells me to speak to the social worker who does the gardening with the young people. I give her my phone number. I give the principal my phone number. Nobody calls. I have no access to keys. In order for me to participate, I have to climb over a fence or go through a hole that's in construction.
All right, so Mr. Goodside...
So my assumption is that you have all the best intentions, but all of the best intentions may not be what they are. I'll give you another example, as I had offered when you had the opening. I had suggested a gentleman by the name of Ripton Cook, who does the soccer team, the young people's soccer program in that neighborhood. And I wanted to give the phone number of the fellow, because you have that beautiful soccer field. We don't have anything like that anywhere in Mount Vernon. And they didn't want the phone number.
All right, so what I'll do is I'll reach out to you, and we'll have a meeting with the church, and we'll set something up so we can make an arrangement, so we can have an agreement on how we can proceed.
There's going to be a meeting of the church with Neighbors That Care and the people who live in the neighborhood on Thursday night to plan a bigger meeting, because we want to see something of a settlement house or some kind of a structure there that addresses the needs of the community. And we're hoping that the beautiful work that you did is the first step in making something happen on a block that's been that way for a very long time, Vernon Heights is a middle-income community. We're a homeowners community. Those apartment houses are dominant in the school population that we serve. And regardless of what happens on that one block, the people who live there are our responsibility.
Of course, I thought the last time, before the fields were built, when you had the large congregation come to the Board of Education, that there was a follow-up conversation. I'm not sure who you were following up with in the district in terms of future involvement and engagement in the gardens. So
Nobody has said no to me.
So one
But
of
access is what I don't get.
So let's just, I'll be in contact with you, Mr. Goodside, and we'll set something up.
Make arrangements.
Okay, we'll make arrangements.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, no problem, thank you.
all right, thank you.
And not just at Graham, at the other schools, because I remember you made that whole presentation about gardening.
What is it in particular to Graham?
Yeah, I know, it's in particular.
But there's an energy we need to have everywhere, isn't
Yeah,
there?
And by the way, regarding the locked up gates, I know we've been under construction and so we didn't want children there unsupervised. What I had discussed with the facilities subcommittee is to have supervision there on the weekends, whereby we could possibly have a security guard that we hire from overtime, whatever, from the school district.
You know what, there's a reality. All you need to do is go there on some of the beautiful days we've been having. The kids are there.
No,
Nobody's
this-
harming this facility.
Well-
They're doing the right thing on a public park.
well,
And I'm just saying that a public park should be public.
No,
And
you're right.
we should have
no,
responsibility
excuse
for
me,
them.
no, we're in discussion with that as far as security and patrolling the area. So, like I said, we'll be in touch. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Goodside.
Joan Horton. Gregory Quellis.
These are all people who thought the speaking part was at 7.
So Mary Savage is with you as well. And Pauline Brower. Reverend DeCohen. John Gallagher.
Good evening, Madam President, Madam Vice President, School Board, and additional school board members. I see you have 5 for a quorum. I'm happy to see that. That seemed to be a little difficulty starting with. I haven't appeared in front of you in a couple of years, and there was a reason why I didn't appear in front of you for a couple of years. The reason is that this school board and previous school boards, you guys were doing the right thing. And yes, I was totally responsible and part of the group that put all of you that are sitting up there and 4 that are missing on the school board. And yes, I supported you, I campaigned for you, whatever. And I like what you're doing. There was nothing for me to come here and talk about because you were doing the right thing as independents. It's been brought to my attention by some people of some expenditures that have been going on here in the school district. And I'm deeply concerned about this because I represent concerned property owners of Mount Vernon. I don't belong to one school. I don't belong to Pennington, even though I live across from Pennington. I don't belong to Traphagen. I don't belong to Graham. I don't belong to Columbus. I look out for all the schools in this district because it's important to me. Our weakest link on a chain could be a school district and it impacts everybody else. I found out recently, and I'm asking you as a board to take a look at it, because as of right now there are allegations, but I intend on doing some research myself, about a room that was built in the high school, taxpayers' money, $170,000. I'd like to know who on this board and who in this school district was responsible for that. And to me, it's totally excessive, if indeed it's true, and if it's not true, I will find out, because to me that's a waste of taxpayers' money, whether it's from the operating fund, whether it's from a bond, whether it's from the new bond, leftover money from the Excel. There's a lot more things we can be doing with that money that's important to our school district. For example, e.g., I have pictures here of Williams School. And I have heard from a parent in Williams School, I have heard from the teaching staff in Williams School, and from other people in that area. A school district, by the way, is not only the children in the school district, not only the parents in the school district, not only administration, but it's also the community itself. The community itself belongs to that school. We pay for that school. We're part of that school. As a matter of fact, we're probably the biggest silent majority in this community. And when I saw pictures of this, and I did request, I had seen some of your staff, Superintendent Hamilton, and I told him I do want to go down there and take a look at Williams School. But I heard from the staff in that school that even their bathrooms aren't operating. I'm looking at holes in the floor, I'm looking at bathroom facilities that aren't working, I'm looking at cracks in the walls, paint being missing, light fixtures being missing, mold on the ceiling. The main way when you walk into the school system, which impacts everybody. It not only impacts the children, the teachers, anybody that goes into that building could be impacted by that. And I am quite frankly appalled that this is happening in a school district. Now, I am not casting a blanket over the 9 school board members or the superintendent. What I'm saying to you is, if these conditions are true, and to me, I believe some of them definitely are, because pictures don't lie. I want to know what you as a group are going to do about this. This should not be swept underneath the rug. This should be brought out to the open. People should know about this, and people should, more importantly, know what you as a board and a school district are doing to remedy this and to fix it. Because whether these children live on the north side of Mount Vernon or the south side, west or east, they all deserve the best that we can give them. And that is your job. Your job, when you took an oath of office, was to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the state of New York, and to do what's right as a fiduciary agent for all the people of Mount Vernon. All the people of Mount Vernon are not just parents and school children. They're everybody. But the children are the most important aspect of this coming out of this. These kids have to go to school in conditions like this. To me, that is appalling. It is ridiculous. And I'm going to ask you as a board to take a look at it internally, and I'm not casting aspersions at individual board members, whatever. I'm telling you as a board, take a look at this. Let me know if this is true. I want to know. My group wants to know. And I think the public want to know about this, what's going on. And in fact, if you guys are not going to do it, trust me, I'm going to do it. Okay? And I'd rather have you people do it internally than me do it.
Okay, Mr.
Because I will start the ball rolling.
Mr.
I
Gallagher.
guarantee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Anybody, Mr. Silver, Mr. Felicio, can you guys respond to Mr. Gallagher?
Yeah.
Regarding the room and the condition at, Williams?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Felicio. I am the Superintendent of Buildings and Grounds. So there are extensive renovations that are going on at Williams School. The conditions are, there are some that are very deplorable, but what we have done in the last month and a half is we started to do some major renovations. The big issue at the site work at Williams was due to flooding. And the flooding was due to storm drains that have been impacted over probably about a decade. So we brought in a company called EarthCare from New Jersey, and just yesterday they finished the complete vacuuming of all of the storm drains. The drains are working, and as a result of the drain issues, we had some flooding in the basement areas, we had some flooding in the playground areas, and we had some macadam, the asphalt was displaced because of the water. So as a result of that, we have contracted Playground Medic to restore the base of the playground, the surface of the playground. We have signed a contract with our mason to do a retaining wall, which is made out of railroad ties. We will restore that wall. We have a stone wall on the perimeter that we are doing work on as well. On the interior, we have painted the front entrance and the main corridors. Today, the superintendent and I actually did a walkthrough where we identified some minor problems in the corridor areas. We spoke with the principal and the head custodian. We're going to do some extensive painting on the inside. We're going to work on some bathroom issues. We're going to do some venting in the bathroom. We're going to replace some fixtures. All this is going to happen in the next 60 days. We've done a lot of work throughout the summer, but it needed a lot of work. So we are working hard to bring that school back up to the conditions that the superintendent has set forth for us. And I think that's about all I have.
I have a quick question regarding my suggestion to you people. What about the auditorium? Mention something about the auditorium. It is deplorable. As a matter of fact, you should have your school board meetings in their auditorium, just to see how bad that
Mr.
school
Gallagher,
is.
please. I want to know what room at Mount Vernon High School cost $170,000.
Can
I have to,
Can I
170,000.
are you speaking about is it in reference to the architect's office? Could that be it?
Is that room $170,000?
Was it 170? I don't know what the exact
Mr. Silver,
figure was.
are you familiar with this?
That is the only possibility, but I don't know that for sure.
I'd like to say a word about this.
So how
Well,
can
can I
I
answer that?
I ask the question? How can we spend $170,000 on a room?
Can I step in here for a second?
I asked the question.
Yeah, and I'm about to give you an answer.
I didn't ask you.
Okay, Mr. Policio, can you answer
build
that?
the room?
I have an opinion because I've been on the Buildings and Ground Facilities Subcommittee, as have you, but you've never been there for a meeting, so
I didn't
I think I do know a little
I did
something
not
about it.
ask you that.
Right, so
Let
Mr. Policio, Mr.
Let
Silver,
Mr. Silver answer the question.
you can answer.
Thank
Feel
you.
free.
If we're speaking of the same room, we're talking about the architect's room, which was room 125, which had a gut rehab. It had mold, we had to take down all the sheetrock, everything had to be redone in that
Why
room.
was it just that
But
room?
I can't tell you today whether that is the room that Mr. Gallagher is speaking of. I could tell you this. I could tell you this, that we are doing major renovations in 5 classrooms at the high school, and the board appropriated $1 million for the renovations of those 5 rooms, several art rooms and some other rooms that were in terrible condition. We don't know that it's going to cost $1 million, but to answer your question, I'm not sure if that's the
But
room.
those rooms that you're doing now are for the children.
They're for the children.
So how does the architect get $170,000? Just because of the mold?
How long they will be architect?
No one knows what room he's talking about. He said there's a room for 170, but he doesn't know which room.
Excuse me, can I have order, please? No
So
talking from the floor, thank you.
So we're talking about room 125 at the high school. That was designated to be the architect's office some year and 8 months ago, something like that. That's when that was done.
All right, so that concludes that question.
I have a
Next
comment.
speaker?
I have a comment before we move on, if you may. So basically, just so that the audience could know, there's a lot of grandstanding that happens here for political purposes, and I'm just going to put it out there. Every single member of this board voted on.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm speaking.
No, we're talking about a room, now we're going to the
And
next
no, I'm
speaker.
speaking. No, I'm speaking directly about this room. I have a comment, and I have the right to make the comment, and you're not going to stop me.
All right, we'll make the comment.
While I'm making it, if you would be quiet for a second, I would like to finish. Okay, so basically, every single board member here, and there's not a time limit for board members, I'm sorry. Every single board member here voted on the resolution to appropriate the funds for that particular room. There was lots of remediation, asbestos, I believe, as well. And if you are at those board meetings, I'm sorry, at the subcommittee meetings, and you dive into these things, you recognize that these things are extremely expensive. I don't know too many things that happens in this district that don't cost money, just because of the union workers that we have, not union, but the prevailing wage, restrictions that we have, and a lot of other things. But it's a lot of money. So the fact that you guys are picking one room, if you're going to pick one room, start picking every single project that happens in this district and start comparing them. And you'll see that actually this room was cheap. All right? So when you pick Williams School, we know that there's work that has to be done at Williams School, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done at Parker School, and Hamilton School, and a lot of the other schools.
Okay.
There's a certain amount of people,
Mr. Zamora,
budgets. I'm not done. I'm not done.
Mr.
I'm not
Zamora,
done.
we need to move on with the meeting.
And after I'm done.
No.
I'm not going to stop. I'm not done. We don't have a time. Mr. Trustee,
Motion for
Trustee
recess,
McCollum, is there a
please.
time limit for trustees to speak on an issue?
Can I get a motion for recess, please?
Our
Okay, so
motion-
there's not. So basically, for political grandstanding purposes, it's not necessary. All right, I know what's going on here, and I'm just letting everybody know.
For grandstanding is not $170,000.
Yes,
It's a taxpayer's issue.
Yes, it is.
It's not grandstanding.
You know what, Mr. Gallagher,
You know
if you're
what?
gonna find one
You
issue.
paid the whole board, and you're right. That's what I said.
Yes,
If the
it's about
shoe
all
fits,
things.
wear it. But I implicated the whole board.
Well, you know what,
Mrs.
find
Moore,
more.
pay attention.
Well,
Pay
no,
attention.
you need to pay attention.
It seems to me you're the one that okayed it.
Oh, really? Well, why don't you look back at all the resolutions and see who appropriated what? Okay, you can easily find out. It's a grandstanding, we know it. Now all of a sudden you're a great South Side proponent. Yeah, sure, whatever. Now you finally have a friend, Mr. Edward, Bishop Edwards, I get it. It is
I'm gonna
grandstanding.
have to adjourn the meeting.
There's no quorum.
We don't have a quorum present. I'm gonna have to adjourn the meeting. Next speaker, please.
Bishop C. Nathan Edwards.
Thank you.
Let me say this, I'm glad, I wasn't gonna say nothing, so I'm not saying nothing. I cannot sit here and allow you all to go back to the place where we once was. Some of you are new on the board, and some have been a long time. When I've been here for 28 years, going on 29 years, and the board members got to work as a unit, not individually. And whatever problem that y'all have, y'all need to resolve the problem out there, because we got too much going on in Mount Vernon for us to see dysfunction once again among the board. Now, another thing I noticed, there got to be respect to the head. When the chairman of anything, and I reside over many, I'm part of many groups, and I'm part of a president of many groups, and I'm a member of many groups. When the chairman calls a point of order to any member, out of respect, you should shut it down, go into executive meeting, and then y'all resolve the issue. I'm so happy that Mr. Gallagher brought up these issues as relates to inappropriate amount of money being spent on things that the taxpayers feel that is not using wise judgment. And we do have a right to come to this board and say to this board, what are you doing? You ultimately make the decision on the allocation and appropriation of funds. But then we also have a right to question why these things was done. And it's not grandstanding, you may call it political, whatever you may call it. I come here because I hear stuff out in the street. And what I hear on the street don't sound good. So I'm coming now and finding out to get the right. But I don't come here, and we don't come here to watch people disrespecting our president. If you was the president, I'll do the same thing. Any one of you, y'all got to get it together, because we don't want to return. Now let me tell you what happened. And let me tell you, after a while, you're going to force this superintendent, when you can't work with a cohesive board, he's going to quit. And that's what ended up with, we had good superintendents, they quit, and then we had to pick up anybody who wanted to come in our district, because the good superintendent said, no, we ain't going there, because you could never get nothing done. This man brought some kind of cohesiveness, some kind of harmony, and please, I'm asking you, please, don't destroy the movement that we're going forward. That I had to say that. Now, if you got repercussions against me, that's fine. You do what you have to do. But we got to stay together. We got one community, we one people, and we got to make sure that we stay as one. If we don't, guess what? They're going to take our community. Because somebody coming in this community is going to take it over, because they realize that this is a good spot to have. So I want to say, Mr. Superintendent, don't you get discouraged. And to the president, don't you get discouraged. But work together. Please work together. That's all I ask. As a man of the faith in the community, an activist, please work together and don't bring this foolishness to us, and please answer the questions. That's all. If you're responsible, Mr. Silva, don't deflect the questions. Don't deflect the questions. Give us the answer. We grown, we can handle it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Edwards, I'd like to ask you one thing. That anyone who comes before the board here, instead of making an allegation, ask a question. We're more than happy to answer. We're always available to answer questions. But when you come up, you don't make an allegation. So for example, that room that you speak of, I know a lot of the expenses in a lot of the rooms and a lot of the renovations and what they cost. And it is in par with everything that we've spent. And every single board member here, whether they read it or not, okay, they all had to read it and they all had to approve it. And so right now, I know it is a political agenda, that's why it comes up, and that's why I mentioned it, that's all. But anyway, you come up with respect, we'll treat you with respect, and everybody else. That is our duty right here at this board to do so. But I never shut anybody up, I never silenced anyone as I sat in that chair. And I don't expect to be treated differently than how I treated people when I sat in that same chair, that's all I'm saying.
Madam President.
Thank you.
Point of clarification. That's an incorrect statement. I never approved anything, so I think there should be a frame of reference on that statement.
At the time, the board members at the time.
Okay. All right, we've had public comments for 30 minutes, so we're moving on to the rest of the agenda.
Amen.
Nobody else get a chance to speak.
That's also unfair. Some of us appeared specifically to speak.
You guys held it up, not us. That ain't cool.
Public comments are limited to 30 minutes.
But you took 15.
And so
There
you
wasn't
can vote
30
to
minutes
extend
of
it
public
for another
comments.
15 minutes?
There was quite a few minutes of trustees walking out, we waiting, we arguing, we asking for respect. There wasn't 30 minutes of public comment.
Reports from the superintendent.
Madam President, may I make a motion I'd like to make a motion to waive the 3 minutes. I don't know if I get a second or not.
Second.
It is, just for clarification for the public, it is a board policy that there is a maximum of 30 minutes of public speaking at each meeting. And it's up to the board to waive it if we choose.
Even when you hold up the meeting?
I second that.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Even when you guys hold up the meeting, it's still
Excuse me, there should be no comments from the floor.
That's,
Thank you.
that's correct, you're right.
There's a motion on the floor.
Mr. Nicole made a motion to waive public comment time limit, seconded by trustees Lee. All those in
All in
favor?
favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Opposed?
Opposed to waiving?
All right, we'll continue with the public comment.
Thank you.
Nadia Mondesir.
Good evening, Superintendent Hamilton, board members, and community members. I come here as a parent who endured the re-registration process, and I have some comments from other parents also. I was pleased when I received the notice that our district was going through re-registration. I understand that it was a massive undertaking, but I have some comments as to the organization and the efficiency of the process. I came on August 3rd because that was a day when we had evening registration, and I'm thankful for that. I'm a working parent, and I was grateful that you provided days when we could come in to register up until 8 p.m. However, coming in, the whole situation was just chaotic and not parent-friendly. Our district really needs to become more parent-friendly, and the registration just was not. The process was just disastrous, and I have a few recommendations that I think could have assisted. If manpower was one of the issues, I feel like the district could have reached out to retired teachers, retired residents who are available to help. I feel like you could have probably asked seniors who are probably looking for credit for community service. All of these people could have been available to make photocopies. There was only 1 or 2 people available to make copies. I would come in, have my documents ready, they would not be checked. I would be given a number and told to go sit down. During that time, what if one of my documents was invalid? I'll be sitting there 20 minutes, then someone would come, check my documents, and be told, oh, we don't need this, you're missing something, and then have to leave. I had a parent who had a utility bill from Robertson Oil. Because the woman at the time at the desk did not recognize that company, it wasn't Con Edison, it wasn't Keyspan, she was like, I don't know this company, we can't take that, you have to go back. That's unacceptable. Someone could have Googled, look up this company and find that it was a utility company. They've been in business for 80 years. That parent had to go back home and get another document to come back on another date. That is totally unacceptable for a parent who's taking time to come do this process. The district really needs to invest in being welcoming to parents and making information transparent so that parents, their time is not wasted. And one more thing I had to say was I think we should have invested more in training the people who were there. One woman did not recognize the deed for my home. She was like, what is this? This is not your mortgage. I'm like, it's not my mortgage, it's my deed. And I just feel like there was more training that had to be done. Invest in the assets of our retired professionals who are available to help. Reach out to the PTA, reach out to mothers who are probably not working. We are all here to help. Just reach out to us instead of putting us through these arduous processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martisol. Ms. Gayon, would you like to respond?
And while Mrs. Gayon is coming up, thank you, Mrs. Montesia, for your comments. And I will just share, unfortunately, accessing confidential documents like that and student records is not something we can open to volunteers. It is the one exception that we have to take in that regard. But I'll let Mrs. Gayon speak to the other.
So I want to thank you for your comments, and they're certainly well received. The re-registration of a district is a massive undertaking, as I'm sure you understand. And I think that we've had both positive and negative comments, and we're learning from this experience. So given the workers and the working staff that we have, I feel like the process has been as good as it can be right now. We had our student services people in place. And I appreciate your ideas, but we can't just hire people that have access to confidential documents. So it's been an arduous task, as I said, and there are people that come in with all the correct documents that they need, and the process is smooth after the wait. There are people that come in with no documentation, and it takes a long time to try to help them through. And then there are people in the middle, and I would say probably the majority of people are in the middle, and it takes a little bit longer because maybe they have an expired lease and they don't have a Con Edison bill or a utility bill, and they don't have the documents that they need to prove that they are indeed residents of Mount Vernon. We do want to ensure that the students that are attending our schools are residents of Mount Vernon. So I do appreciate everybody's patience with the process. It has been really difficult, and we appreciate your support.
Can I just ask Felicia, where are we at in terms of percentage right now? I'm curious. With registrations.
We have about over 6,000 of our 8,000 students registered, which is a pretty significant number. We continue to send out the letters to families that have not re-registered. We have flagged families that have provided fraudulent documents, and so we're making progress. And now that we've engaged in this endeavor, we also know when people's leases expire, so we know when to have them come back in and provide documentation that they continue to live in Mount Vernon. We've also been able to link siblings with families, and we did some other things in terms of providing families access to their students' grades while we were conducting this re-registration.
So when are you going to finish the re-registration process?
Well, officially, we're supposed to be finished on Thursday, but I would imagine to the families who have not been able to provide the documentation, we'll give them a little bit longer so that we give them time to provide the documentation that they need.
As of the last report that I saw, you had about 2,500 students that have not re-registered, and that takes into account those that graduated. I added them all up. what percentage of that remaining population do you suppose it will have credible documentation to register back into the system?
It's hard for me to say, but I would say there is a number that do not have documentation to re-register in Mount Vernon. And when we come up with the final date where we will no longer allow people to be enrolled in the schools, if they have not provided us with the documentation that they live in the schools, we'll be able to have a better number.
Is there a date? I mean, if I just moved into the community and say it's October 17th, I'm not allowed to register into the system?
Oh, of course you are, but we're talking about re-registration now, not registration. We're talking about families that are currently enrolled in the Mount Vernon School District and have not provided us with documentation that they continue to live here.
But let's say I provided on October 17th and I am re-registering. Am I not allowed as a family to re-register if I do have the proof?
Well, right now, we've asked that families complete the re-registration process before the start of the school year. So if we give them longer than the start of the school year, which is September 7th, then October 17th, it seems like...
Well, the point I'm making is that at any point that someone has proof of residence here, they can register for school, correct?
They can register, that's a different...
Right,
that's
they
different.
just can't be admitted until they have that proof.
Exactly. Well, they would be disenrolled at that point, at the cutoff point, and
Right.
then if they come back on October 17th and they have documentation that they live in Mount Vernon, they can re-enroll in our schools.
Sure. Okay, so basically, up until that point, and have you established that date, whatever the date may be?
I'm going to work with the superintendent and cabinet in terms of coming up with a final date that we will...
So will they be allowed in school up until that date?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Gale.
Thank you.
Christine Gibson. Angela Neal.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, trustees. Superintendent, Madam President.
Good evening. How are you?
Everybody. The last meeting that we were here, the superintendent mentioned that he's going to be working with you, Trustee McCohen, on a nepotism policy. This is very personal to me. I know there is a parent coordinator job coming up that I really wanted to apply for. While we were doing the elections, I spoke with she was a trustee at the time, Trustee Saunders, a couple times after meeting a few parents who were having issues. And I called her, and she was very instrumental in resolving some of those issues that some of the parents were having, with their children. I thought I'd really enjoy that job. And I put a lot of thought into it, and I realized that it would be perceived as nepotism if I applied for that job and if I got accepted to it. And I realized in this public arena, nepotism, it has been a huge downfall of Mount Vernon, right? And that's with friends and family. Votes can be compromised because of it. People don't vote their conscience. They vote to preserve one person's livelihood, to the detriment of many. It undermines the credibility of the school district, and it perpetuates the perception of cannibalizing our taxpayers. So I decided not to apply for that job because I realized my husband on the board, his credibility is at stake, okay? The Mount Vernon School District, the state of affairs, it affects the morale of our city. And more importantly, it affects the values of our homes. And I thought about when these guys are up here talking about inappropriate spending of money, that could also be considered an inappropriate spending of money. You can't pick and choose inappropriate spending of money, okay? The progress made in the past year is fragile, and the moral infrastructure of many of the city agencies and elected positions, the moral infrastructure is very unstable. and it is at risk of crumbling. And so I know you're working on that policy. I don't know how far you've reached with the superintendent. But my challenge to your policy is that the trustees choose either to be on the board or to let your family members work for the school district. And I feel that I have the right to say that because I made that choice. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I respond?
Sure.
I'll be brief. Yes, we will have a draft of a new nepotism policy at the next board meeting next week. It's already been mostly written, and there is and has been for a long time a nepotism policy of the district. It is very brief and vague, and the new one will be not as brief and not as vague. And as always, these things are a balancing act between making sure that we have the very best and most qualified people working in our district, and against the risks that when you have friends and family members of existing, not only board members, but also administrators who do the hiring, there's the risk that you are not hiring the most effective people for the job. So you'll see our first reading next week, and welcome your comments at the first reading.
Our last speaker is Jeff Monroe.
Before I begin, I'd like to say thank you for respecting the democratic process, trustees. Without democracy, all we have is tyranny, and Mount Vernon doesn't need to look like Washington. So, I'd like to, well, first, there's several issues. I'd like to follow up on the Cable Television Advisory Committee issue that I raised, I believe it was about 4 meetings ago. Trustee McCowan was good enough to initiate some dialogue, but I haven't heard anything in response since. Haven't seen any action on it. And as the chair of the Cable Television Advisory Committee, I'm still concerned about whatever response or whatever knowledge you have as a body on that issue. The My Brother's Keeper initiative apparently has been appointed, has appointed an organization known as REACH. I have not any familiarity with them or history with the organization. The My Brother's Keeper initiative representative of the school district, Brother Arthur Muhammad, has been good enough to inform us of this at our last meeting, but to this date, I don't know anything about REACH. I understand REACH is going to be the administration's representative of MBK locally. That's my very vague but only understanding of it, and he has promised some feedback, and we haven't gotten any yet. The school district also has awarded $25,000, from my understanding, to the Just Inspire LLC to manage the grants for My Brother's Keeper initiative, which I understand is one of many different awards that you've granted for Just Inspire. They have a total of at least $215,500 in other responsibilities like data management, providing parent educational workshops, etc. I don't understand what Just Inspire really does. I've gone to their website and I don't understand how they're really going to be responsible for interacting with this community, considering the access that they have to facilitating work in the community. I'm not saying that they shouldn't do it. Obviously, someone should. I understand grants have a particularly a unique accountability other than public funds, but the fact is this board has not historically adopted public forums and ongoing dialogue, and without that mechanism, we just can't afford to wait for board meetings to understand the details of some of these things. So if you could please give me some inspiration, quite frankly, and some more enlightenment on what Just Inspire really entails. Having said that, the Performing Arts and Visual Magnet summer program has gotten a total of $68,000 from what I understand for the year, for this upcoming academic year of work. They've done wonderful work with our children. I haven't, frankly, I haven't benefited from seeing a production, but again, I don't know what actually they offer as a production company or as an operation. They do ongoing work in production, but I don't know how the community actually benefits from those productions considering how brief they tend to be. And I'm also hoping that, considering that they're partially funded by general fund, whether or not they're grant or general fund funded, I'm wondering if operational contributions like equipment, I don't know if, I know they bring in audio and video assets, I don't know if they're bringing equipment. Is that equipment accessible to the community, which to me is a consideration for some benefit, because obviously the productions and the lessons and academic and social benefits to the students are intangible, but I'm hoping we're not privatizing assets that other companies or entities are bringing to our public services. To finish what I have to say, really, I'd like to also bring forth a concern for this whole issue of the Afrocentric education. The August 12th Charlottesville incident is one that has brought white supremacy to the forefront of discussion, at least in the media, if not in everyday dining rooms and living rooms of the United States. But I think Mount Vernon could benefit from better dialogue on the actual history of what's happened in this country's social, political, and cultural history. The superintendent was good enough to talk about his trip to Africa and was insightful as to how deplorable their education conditions are. But I think we know better from our academic resources, and our children should know, black and white children should know, that Africa is the way it is because it's been bled literally by the West, and that everything we benefit from here is at the deficit of those countries. That should come across in our studies, and it should be addressed that way academically. It shouldn't have to be political. Thank you.
We'd like to respond to you.
I'm going to ask Dr. BC, who has firsthand knowledge on how our grants are written and managed, and the role of REACH and Just Inspire in particular.
Sure. Mr. Monroe, for future reference, when you want to know anything about grants, I'm always at the office. You can make an appointment and come in and see me. And I'll be glad to give you all the information you need. Now, with REACH, REACH has been appointed not by the school district. REACH is an organization that works with our school district, but it has been appointed by the New York State Department to take care of the MBK. Not only just Mount Vernon, but it's also taking care of every single school district that gets the MBK grant. That has nothing to do with us. So we have to do what the state asks us to do. So they'll be coming in, they'll be having meetings with every school district, with people in the MBK organization. So it's not the Mount Vernon City School District has appointed REACH, it's the New York State Department. Okay? So that's number one. Number two, Just Inspire is our grant company. And the first name was Wildcore. Now, we don't pay
I'm sorry, you said the first name was?
Whitecore.
Whitecore?
Whitecore, and it has changed to Just Inspire.
Okay.
So it's our grant company, okay? So our grant company, we do not pay them. What they do, in their contract, they have a 5 to 10%, wherein that whatever grants they write, they are required to get 5 or 10% of that grant. And that they do by putting it back into a school district to do more or less programs or some of those things that you referred to. And they have been doing a very good job of that. So if you want to come in my office, I can sit down and I can put everything to you and you can see that's how that piece is going. So if you have any more questions than that, I'm not going to spend time on that because I like to give evidence when I'm talking to you. And you know for a fact that if you want information, you can come to my office. I don't need to be going through all that tonight. But it's our grant company that is having hired by the district, and that's who we have.
There should be some dialogue, and I welcome any other invitation to your office, but I have a job. I don't have time to come to district offices on a regular basis.
But
so
can you come out to
I'm
school?
welcoming public disclosure of the information, so I
Okay.
appreciate your response.
Right, but again, if you want any other information, you can come.
Okay, thank you,
Okay?
Dr. BC.
I'd rather public disclosure, but
Thank you.
okay. No, the public should know. I don't.
It's on the website.
It's not on the website either, by the way.
Superintendent report.
Okay, good evening all. Under the superintendent's report tonight, I'd like to first of all just remind you that the convocation, we are delighted to have world-renowned Dr. Pedro Nagara, whose research has had a large impact on some of the work and ideas which influence our improvement efforts. He will be our keynote address. We're all very excited about that. I also would like to take this opportunity tonight to present a couple of certificates. Last year, we funded, through Dr. BC's efforts and grants acquired through Just Inspire, we identified a cadre of youngsters who had actually become disengaged and were not attending school, and we wanted to make sure that we were providing services and supports for those youngsters. So I'm pleased to report that tonight I am going to be presenting certification to some of those youngsters tonight who have gone through technical education training and have completed the program and have increased now their employability to go from $10 an hour to $30 an hour, working in a trade by acquiring very specific certificates, some of them 2 and 3 certificates particularly, that gives them their Black Seal license, their plumbing certificates, etc. And I just could not be more proud of our district for recognizing that there were youngsters who needed other options to increase their employability. So tonight I am honored to present a certificate of completion for building maintenance technician and air pollution oil burner and incineration certification. And these are certificates that are not just about completing the program, but certificates that are certified and sealed as credentials for acquiring jobs. Is Joshua here tonight? Michael Anthony Kearney. Samuel Santana. Congratulations. Samuel, you want to comment?
Say something? No.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Tobias Colbert for building maintenance technician, environmental compliance. So when we talk about all children and making sure none of our children fall through the cracks, this is the other end of the continuum. Students who may have found themselves working at McDonald's and now will be able to make $30 an hour. Oh.
President, fix your collar. That'll be a horrible picture with your collar like that. Please fix your collar.
Who's that, babe?
No, your collar. You like the font. Yeah, your collar. You all work.
Christopher Sarti. Christopher's not here. And lastly, Casey Beaumont. Congratulations to all of our students. Congratulations to Dr. BC for bringing this initiative to light, and to our grants for creating the opportunity for these youngsters. Thank you. do want to commend Mrs. Gahon for her leadership on the re-registration process. As difficult as it was and as arduous, and certainly opportunity for growth, we have identified a number of people who were in our community attending our schools who do not live in Mount Vernon. We identified a family, in fact, who had been in our district with 3 children for the last 2 years, and were able to disenroll them. And when you think about the cost to educate a youngster, multiply that times 3 over the last 2 years, it makes this process worthwhile in spite of its growing pains. And that's just one case that was on my radar. And there will be others that will need to be investigated, quite frankly. I also want to commend our custodial crew. I started building tours today. Our custodians and maintenance crew should be commended for their efforts to ready our building. Holmes is another example of that, as you can see this evening. And I have to say the extra per diems that we provided through the budget process made a huge difference in assisting with getting our buildings ready, ahead of schedule, by the way. And I want to also take this opportunity to thank the Journal News and Channel 12. They have given us considerable coverage over the summer, which goes a long way with our efforts to rebrand our district. They have covered the groundbreaking at Pennington. They helped us to get the word out about our uniform initiative and featured us in a recent edition to highlight our progress on the state assessment results, which we're very proud of. And that is the perfect segue into the other part of my presentation this evening, which will be our data presentation facilitated by Dr. Clytisha Walden. Dr. Walden?
Good evening, all. Thank you, Dr. Hamilton, Superintendent of Schools, to our distinguished trustees, to our community. I stand before you because I am so excited to share this wonderful news of the progress of our students.
This is uploaded to Word Docs of the board? Okay. I'm sorry, Dr. Walden.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hamilton. Actually, everyone can follow right along as there's the presentation slides as well as a packet for the board as well. We are most fortunate to educate over 8,000 students ranging from pre-K to grade 12 here in our district, where on average our student attendance rate is about 91%. With our students with disabilities about 18% and our English language learners about 8%. About 74% of our students are economically disadvantaged, eligible for free lunch as well as reduced lunch. We have a number of our schools in good standing, as well as focus and priority schools as well. This evening, I'd like to focus on our data trends. And I have great news to share as we've made considerable progress. In terms of our increases of grades 3 through 8, as many of you are well aware, the state has recently released the latest performance of our students. And there has been an increase in our proficiency rate. That means levels 3s and 4s. In fact, 85% of our elementary and middle schools have increased in English language arts. So that's phenomenal news. In fact, 100% of our elementary and middle schools have increased in the areas of mathematics. Additionally, an increase in our proficiency rate of our subgroups, meaning our English language learners and students with disabilities. And when we, recently the state just released our unadjusted mean growth percentile. So we have an increase in that as well. So we're really on the right road. We have a ways to go, but we are certainly on the right road. In terms of our secondary schools, high schools in particular, a steady increase in our graduation rate, an increase in our post-secondary college plans. So that means an increase in students that are aspiring to go to 4-year universities. Our district participation rate has increased in English Language Arts and Mathematics, and Thornton High School achieved over a 92% graduation rate. This really speaks to a team approach under the leadership and vision of Dr. Hamilton, our superintendent of schools, and our trustees, as well as the talent of the entire cabinet, our administrators, our school leaders, both principals and assistant principals, teachers, and the great collaboration with many of our partners, as well as our community members. So it's really a celebration of a combined effort. And one of the mantras of Dr. Hamilton is that college doesn't begin as you're entering. It begins in pre-K. So really the vision and the wonderful leadership of the visionary of the district is a full-day pre-K. So we have our pre-K 3 program that through Dr. Bennett Conroy's office, we have a tremendous increase from last year, 54 3-year-olds and now 90. And there are 25 on the waiting list. So this really speaks to looking ahead and looking at the legacy that we are leaving our youngsters in our community. And then under Dr. Hamilton's leadership, Universal Pre-K, or our 4-year-olds, over 300 youngsters are being educated. So really this speaks to the great work of a combined effort. So some of the things to keep in mind that's significant about pre-K is that the students' proficiency rate grew. And I got this straight off the press from our pre-K administrator, Dr. White Wallace, from 47 to 79% in a year. That speaks to letter sound recognition, naming letters, a bit of vocabulary, and so you see that really the vision long term. Now, when we look at our pre-K and we look at kindergarten, what are some of the other measures that we have in place? We have DIBELS, which really speaks to early literacy skills. And if you notice, there's an increase of those that's on or above grade level, but also a decrease, which is a good thing, of students that are below or at high risk at our kindergarten level, and the trend is also going in the right direction for our first grade students. So when we look at legacy and we look at predictors of high school graduation and post-secondary success, we see it starts well before the testing years. Now, as we go into our testing grades, grades 3 through 8, we have a great deal to celebrate. Many of our focus and priority schools have increased considerably in ELA proficiency rate. I see our Principal Doggett, principal of Rebecca Turner Elementary School, that school alone increased by 21%. So kudos. A.B. Davis School, our school that's under receivership status, increased by 10%. So we are well on the right now. Our schools in good standing has increased as well. Parker Elementary by 11, Lincoln School by 5. So as we look, and you can see the steady growth over time, really with our, under this leadership, we see that we've had a steady growth of about 15% over the last few years with proficiency rate. And remember, that's level 3s and 4s on the state exam. Now, as we look at the proficiency rate by school, there has been growth as well. So when we're looking for a marked improvement, again, as I shared, 85% of our elementary and middle schools have increased. And you see that this is broken down so you can see value added over time. By grade, when we look at proficiency rate by grade, this really speaks to curriculum focus. This really speaks to the instructional trends that's happening grade by grade. And we see many of our grade levels have increased. One of the things that we do as a group, as a team, when we look at curriculum analysis, we look specifically at how students are performing. So when we look at the performance index, understanding that is a range of 0 to 200. And that speaks to the performance of those in an accountability measure. We see our district is trending upward, going from 69 to about 100 points. And as we do our analysis, we see that there are some areas in terms of instruction and curriculum that we're going to focus on this school year. Because those were the analysis points that we noted when we looked at the grade analysis on our English exam. For instance, main idea and the tone of the text, having youngsters compare and contrast, understanding the different text features, referring back to details in text, using context, so that cause and effect relationship, and writing. When you look at the analysis of writing, you can really gain a number of points just by really taking time in writing and really that analysis and referring back and citing textual evidence. When we look at the performance index by school, we see that we have grown as well. We see a number of our schools on our continuum. So as we move on to mathematics, we see, and I'm very excited to share, that all of our elementary and middle schools have increased in their proficiency rate. That means there's an increase of our level 3s and 4s on our state mathematics exam. So Hamilton School, for instance, increased by 17%. Rebecca Turner by 14%, Columbus by 11%, Williams School by 6%, A.B. Davis by 6%. And as a district, we are trending upwards, understanding that it is a continuum on our journey to greatness and success. Although we have a ways to go, we are trending in the right way, so our trajectory is moving forward. As we look at the proficiency rate school by school, by school, you can see the increase in level 3s and 4s. And this speaks to value and our analysis over time, and the concerted effort of everyone working as a team. As we look at our mathematics proficiency by grade, this speaks to the curriculum and instructional focus for this year, which deals with building upon the different mathematical concepts and the complexity of the different tasks that students are to complete. At grade 3, multiplication in a real-world application, reading an analog clock, fraction equivalency. By grade 4, we're deepening that work. By grade 5, geometry, rounding decimals. At our grade 6 level, we're looking at interpreting fractions and solving word problems. By grade 7 and 8, understanding that's the building blocks, because we're moving forward for our moving forward to our goal of post-secondary success, so probability and proportions. So we're deepening the work, understanding that mathematics is a building block and there's a spiraling of various skill sets. As we're looking at our performance index, our schools are different places in their continuum. As we look at ELA and mathematics, we are trending in the right direction, having increases district-wide. As we go on to our secondary schools, now we talked about pre-K, elementary, and middle. Our secondary schools have various measures to show their level of accountability with New York State Education Department. And one measure is our Regents scores. What is significant and very exciting about this particular data set is that you notice the scoring is 65 to 100, because that speaks to passing rate. But this most significant piece is really the cusp of that, I would say 84 going into that 85 to 100. Why? Because that really speaks to college and career readiness. That means that youngster does not have to take remedial courses as they go on to college. So that's really where we are in terms of our data trend. and really helping our youngsters understand the significance of doing well, of really working hard with integrating writing throughout. Looking at the performance index, if you notice the tremendous growth of our high schools. In terms of mathematics, you see the continuum of their performance index as well. Now, when we look at mathematics, notice the difference between English language arts and mathematics. So again, we're working very diligently for our college and career readiness at all of our high school levels and district-wide, but we are moving in the right direction. Graduation rate, another significant measure in terms of accountability. Our district graduation rate over time has steadily increased. In fact, under Dr. Hamilton's leadership, a growth of 11%. Significant. Understand that when we talk about graduation rate, there are oftentimes two measures that are reported. You have your four-year outcome in June, so you have your June snapshot as well as your August snapshot. And what I want you to understand is the trends in our high school are moving in the right direction. So this is our June snapshot. If you notice, in our high schools, our graduation rate has increased. And the most significant, I just want to share, if you haven't noticed, is Thornton High School. Significant, well above the state standard of 80%. Now, let's look at each high school separately, in particular, the August snapshot. Why August? Because oftentimes in August, that gives us that room because we submit our data to the state in the fall. Remember, this is lag data, so this is a year ago. And the significant, place that I want you to focus on is the increase in the graduation rate in terms of the analysis. And meeting with each of the school leaders, I want you to see that this August snapshot will increase. Why? Because we're in August right now. The data is reported in the fall, so we're expecting all of our graduation rates to increase. So that is really a wonderful place. In August, because we have a number of interventions, summer school, that helps to bring up our numbers. And as I was sharing, Thornton High School. So the vision of Dr. Hamilton and the mantra is pre-K is really the building blocks, that foundation for post-secondary success or college. One of the goals that I want you to note is that our youngsters now are understanding the importance of various options in their lives. And if you noticed a few years ago in school year 2013-14, we had more students that applied to two-year colleges, community colleges. Now we have an increase of students that are enrolling and going to four-year colleges and universities, and that is significant in terms of their economic options, in terms of their career choices. So we see that there has been, at Mount Vernon High School, for instance, a decrease in two-year enrollment and a significant increase in four-year enrollment. So that speaks to really the work of our counseling department and the concerted effort as a team. This is very significant at Thornton High School, where we have students that are saying, I'm going to a four-year college or university, of 37 percentage points. Awesome. As well as Mandela School, the students saying, I'm going to college. So this really speaks to really helping our youngsters and equipping them. And how did this happen? It wasn't just alone. One of the things we've looked at is systems and the structure for success. 3 years ago, there was an invitation meeting for our seniors at that time and talking to them and their counselors coming in and sharing and imparting information about college and universities. Now, every grade level has that. So information is shared and our youngsters are armed. They're really thinking about life outside of Mount Vernon, after high school, and their dreams and their goals and aspirations. So 3 years ago, an evening parent night, and now a morning and an evening, so that parents have information really according to their schedule. We have more college fairs. We have a number of technologies so that youngsters are able to access this information quickly. If you notice, all of the universities, all of the wonderful college acceptances, from universities that are CUNY and SUNY to those that are private, across the country. So the good news is that we're really on the right trajectory. And so what does this mean in terms of our data trends? Why share this data? What are the implications in terms of what we're doing? For one thing, you have to share this information in these schools. So we've shared this at the administrators retreat. We're sharing this for our school leaders and then for teachers. In our lower grades, we're still focusing on phonemic awareness so that the students understand phonemes or letter sound recognition. Our intervention with Dibbles and in-class circle and Waterford. For our grades 3 through 8 students, we're continuing on with our new standards as well as our iReady assessments, our beginning, middle, and end of the year data snapshots. This year we will have our anthology, our ELA anthology called Journeys, that will be implemented in grades 3 through 5 so that we have a standard anchor text in the classroom. Envisions Mathematics, if you notice the rise in mathematics. So it's a hands-on differentiated mathematics program. We also have our technology programs from iReady to Achieve 3000, Read 180 that will continue. At our secondary level, we have a number of our options in terms of CTE, of course, Regents Prep and Abbott. Very excited about the creation of the STEAM High School, which really offers our high schools of excellence, which is part of the 2020 vision. We have our rollout of our H&H, Social Studies instructional materials. In terms of interventions, how are we supporting our teachers? How are we supporting our youngsters? Well, we have our standards administrators and instructional coaches offering support in the classroom. So there's common planning time for our teachers so that they can plan together and look at data. We've had schedulers to come in during the summer to support our school leaders to maximize instructional time. And of course, our year-long professional development. This week we had a wonderful time with supporting our new teachers, onboarding them in new teacher orientation. In terms of our students, this is very exciting. This is our year where we have our response to intervention, or RTI, for English language arts, as well as mathematics at our elementary school level. So the students are getting support in both of those major areas. Our extended day and our tutoring services that are offered through the Office of School Improvement. This year, very exciting, we have our level libraries and our silent sustained reading that will be going on daily. And of course, an increase in student writing, because every assessment has writing as a key component. Many of you discussed the importance of strong partnerships with our district, as well as really engaging our 21st century learners through blended learning, through different credit recovery, through the use of Play-Doh, ongoing parent meetings, and really building in a data infused and a driven culture through our data teams. So what are some of our next steps? Of course, bringing in parents in the community for ongoing meetings. We are working diligently to ensure that we are having instructional focused walks where we're looking at 4 key areas: engagement, questioning and discussion, the learning environment, and key instructional practices in terms of problem solving. There's a deal of work around data, as well as ongoing support for our teachers. So it's really about having opportunities for more literacy. And I just wanted to highlight one success, which was the Superintendent Reading Challenge, where totally our youngsters read over 150,000 books. So again, so it's really truly the concerted effort of the entire community for success. And we are also looking forward to greater success this school year.
Dr. Walden, thank you for that very thorough and well-articulated data presentation. And as much as I appreciate the accolades, it is really about acknowledging our principals, members of the cabinet, and lastly, our teachers for doing the grunt work in making these results happen. And I do have to call special attention to Mr. Doggett, who is here this evening. Progress that the parent is exceptional and a model that other schools and districts will model, so congratulations. And lastly, on the superintendent's report this evening is just to give the board an update on staffing. We are just about at 100% staffing for the new school year. There are about 13 positions that we plan to fill over the next week or so. Some of them are hard to fill, positions like media specialists, which is an issue across the state. But kudos to the HR department and our principals and compact teams for their efforts in this regard. And that concludes the superintendent's report for this evening.
I have some questions about the presentation. And I'll second those kudos, because I remember last year it's a little less frantic this year than last year. Even I know this. I know you know this on a daily basis, but even I know. On the Regents results, I had 2 questions. So is it correct to say the Regents scoring, so 65 is passing and below, so because I'm confused by the math slide for the high school on the Regents. I think there's just a glitch in the graph or something. It's clearly not accurate, and I don't know what the actual numbers are. Because it shows 100% of Mount Vernon High School got 80%, or 80 on the Regents, which would be awesome, but I don't think that's accurate. And while you're getting back to that slide, I have just a kind of a broader question. Looking forward, and Dr. Gorman, this goes to what you and I were discussing before the meeting about planning for the change to the high schools that's coming up, next year, and making this transition to more student-centered high schools. And my question is, do we have any sense about what is that going to do to individual scores for the various high schools? Because right now, there's various histories of these buildings, and these buildings have different populations of children. I'm talking about the high schools, the 3 high schools. They all have their own populations, and those populations have histories, but they're to some extent geographically based, and there's other factors as well. But as we transition into giving students the choice of having an arts program and having a science program, my assumption is, naturally, that a lot of our math scores at the science high school are going to be higher, and the math scores at other high schools might be less high as a result, because the kids who love math are going to go there, right? And my question is, and this is not going to be answered right now, but are we thinking about that implication, and are we careful that we don't end up, one of the fears I have of the population shift is that we end up with schools being put in failing status simply for self-selection, because the students who go there are doing weak in one area. Am I making sense? You understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, and it's a question worthy of consideration. However, what the research tells us about schools of choice is that when youngsters make their own choices about being in schools or selecting programs that are geared toward their particular interests and their particular skill set, they generally perform better. So on the
In all
surface,
levels, right, in all
in all areas, exactly. So on the surface, that research would suggest that the direction that we are heading in is actually going to help perpetuate the trends that we currently see in terms of student outcomes. But in addition to that, having content area specialists, particularly teachers who are in schools because they want to be there and have a degree or a specialization in the content area that they want to have an opportunity to experience, is also an indication in terms of what the research says about how those youngsters demonstrate greater levels of proficiency. And while standardized assessments are not the be-all and end-all, it is what the state reports, it is what the public sees, but there are some other things that are not measurable that have a lot to do with youngsters being able to select the schools that they want to go to. And that has a lot to do with pride, that has a lot to do with self-confidence, that has a lot to do with pathways after high school, attendance rates, and overall enthusiasm about learning. So there are some things that the state assessment will not measure that we anticipate will help bring about improvement as well.
Thank you for pointing that out. Visually, yes, it's there was an error with the percentage point. However, the data is correct in that at Mount Vernon High School, the youngsters that took the Algebra 1 region scored 2.86% of them scored in the range of 80 to 84. So I did see now the percentage point. Thank you for catching that. But you see that we are moving diligently in working with our youngsters to really achieve college and career readiness, which is 85% or higher on these really benchmark type of regions that really speak to their level of preparation for college.
Thank you. I do not have a president's report tonight. However, I would like to apologize to the trustees and the community for coming out of character, please. Thank you. Committee reports. Do we have any committee reports today?
Yeah, so Dr. Borman, Gary Gregory, and myself met earlier this morning. We're in the process, early stages of creating what we hope is going to help all the kids in Mount Vernon really increase their chances of getting into college. It's very early stages, but it is revolving around the initiation of a systematic set of clubs. And we're, again, very early stages, but I think it was a very positive meeting. Secondly, Ken Silver and myself and former trustee McDowell met in regards to the budget/audit committee and spent about a half hour going over preliminary numbers and setting the tone of what the next couple of meetings will be. So that was, again, another positive meeting.
Ms. White?
I attended the education meeting, and we talked about, we had 3 guest speakers, Mrs. Marcy Tiggs, Frank Gallo, and Dr. Walden, and Satish, Jagnandan. And we just talked about what was going to be happening this year. We have 3 schools are going to pilot a new science program, 3 different science programs, so that we can see which science program will benefit our children. So Grimes is doing one, Graham and Williams. We talked about the RTI, we talked about the counselors that Ms. Tiggs is involved with and their duties for this year. Frank Gallo talked about the literacy for the high school. We're going to be programming a social studies politan, a social studies curriculum for the high school, and that will be, I think it's Mandela? No. I forgot what school was going to be Politan at. So we just had an overall look at what has been going on during the summer and what will be taking place for the fall and for 2017-18.
Thank you. Are you chairing the facilities?
Yes, I am chairing facilities, and we haven't had a couple of meetings, but we have talked about different things, the different things that are going on in our district as far as the site work that's being done at Williams, and we talked about the different site works that's being done all around. We talked about the new Graham opening of their new schools. So we've been just going through what has been done or will be done during this school year before the kids get back in classes.
Trustee Sewell, you have?
No, I don't chair anything.
I'll speak as for the family community engagement. We've been having some prep meetings, getting ready for the upcoming event, the back to school event, Mind, Body, and Soul on September 16th. Please make sure that's in your calendars. We'd love everybody to come out. It's going to be similar to the event we did last year, but hopefully better in every way, learn from some mistakes and planning things a little bit differently, and I hope it'll be a really exceptional event. And in mid-September, it won't be too hot, it'll be a really nice day out. I'll postpone a policy committee update until next week.
Can I speak? We're also, Dr. Walden is also having a curriculum elementary meeting September 26th. So if you want to know the requirements for this year, please come out to that meeting. And then there's a high school secondary meeting on September 27th. September 26th is going to be at Rebecca Turner, and the secondary program will be at Mount Vernon High School. So please encourage all parents to come out, get as many of your friends and parents to come out to really learn what's going on in the city of Mount Vernon and to how to help your at home.
Thank you, Trustee Wright.
I'm sorry, what were those dates again?
September 26th, that's the elementary
Oh, that's
one.
this flyer, right, okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
this
I got
flyer.
it, okay.
Is that also on the website?
Yes.
Madam President, if I can make an observation, and I apologize in advance if this disappears out of order, but I'm a little concerned that we spend an hour having some unpleasant discourse, and we just shared some data with you that I think is something that warrants some board attention, and it was just glossed over. I don't need the accolades as a superintendent, it's not about me, but I think the district, the staff needs to know that you see this as important work, and that some comment or statement from the board to the staff about commending them for their work with these kinds of results is admirable. This kind of stuff doesn't happen without the hard work and dedication. And you've been very supportive, so please don't, you plural, I've been very supportive, so please don't take this as pejoratively at all. But to not give this the kind of attention that I think it warrants, given the effort and time and money and resources that went into creating these results. And we're derailed by conversations that I think perpetuate dysfunctionality rather than the kinds of things that should be bringing us together around student success and acknowledging teachers for their hard work. I'm a little discouraged by that.
Absolutely.
And I apologize.
I apologize, and I would like to commend all the staff, principals, administrators, all the facility people that helped our children get where they are this last year. It's really commendable. I do my apology. And a sincere apology, like I told you that. So that said, I think the other members of the board would like to add something to that. Trustee White?
I just would like to apologize for.
But please don't think you need to apologize.
No. But I do have one more thing to say about facility. Our next facility meeting will be September 5th.
Right.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're doing good work. You're doing a good job. My property value going up. Thank you.
We all win. Since Madam President invited us, I just want to say, I want to thank the superintendent for saying that, and I want the public to know that this man is your biggest advocate, and he's a bigger advocate than we deserve. And without exception, whether it's in a private phone call with one of us, which he has with all 9 of us, whether it's at meetings publicly, whether it's an executive session, whether it's at the retreat we had recently, this man is 100% focused on the children of this city. Without exception, I've never met any man so dedicated to improving the lives of children in my life. I don't care who's on this board. I echo the sentiment that we are at this point thanks to many people. Many people, a lot of them in this room, more of them not in this room, most of them teachers and substitute teachers and the lunch ladies and the janitors and all the people who have caught a fever for improvement in this city. And that's due to lots of people. That's due to some people who made public comment. That's due to trustees DeMoore. That's due to our president. That's due to lots of different people. And that is a momentum that I concur does not happen easily, and it doesn't happen every generation. And damn us if we blow that. Pardon me. So thank you, Dr. Hamilton, for always, whether our arguments are petty or significant, we have them and we're human. But he's not petty, and he's not human. And he always keeps us focused. So thank you, Dr. Hamilton. And the staff who made things happen.
We need you more. What you got to say?
No speaking from the floor. Let's. Okay, that completes the committee reports.
Motion to approve the minutes from July 23rd.
Motion.
Trustee Saunders?
Second.
Trustee McCollum? All's in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion
Motion to enter an executive session for matters of.
It's a special education matter, current or pending litigation. That's everything.
How long?
Before we adjourn, just so that we don't, if you don't mind, Madam President, I'd like to just go a little out of order because we have some new employees here this evening, and I'd like to just take this opportunity to welcome them into our district. Mrs. Gagnon-Kapusky, would you, because I don't know if my list is complete here, if you would just acknowledge those folks who are new to our district. We had an amazing new teacher orientation this week, and 50 people were in attendance and excited about coming into our district, and had an incredible induction facilitated by the Curriculum Instruction Office and Deputy Superintendent. Mrs. Gagnon-Kapusky, if you would just acknowledge those folks before we break, in case they don't want to hang around to the end of the meeting.
But just to be clear, we haven't voted yet.
Some of them were previously approved.
Oh, previous, okay.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you so much for the attention. It is my pleasure to introduce to you some of our new administrators and teachers. Barry Tactile, would you stand please? He's our dean. Danielle Grandazzo, she is a special ed teacher at Rebecca Turner. Officially, if there's anyone else that I've missed, I thought I was able to circulate the room, but is there anyone else? I don't think there is.
Okay, thank you very much for your indulgence this evening, and welcome aboard. Thank you for that opportunity.
Yes, we have a motion by trustee Saunders, need a second.
Second.
Trustee White? All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried. Board is adjourned in executive session. Trustee Saunders made a motion, seconded by trustee Russo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
What are we doing?
Reconvene.
Sorry?
Reconvene.
I'll reconvene, yes.
Consent agenda items?
Yes,
I'm sorry, I missed 6.1. Opportunity for board members to remove any item from consent agenda?
I have a few.
Should I go ahead and read it, or are you gonna wait to see if anybody else?
I don't believe any, does anyone else have anything to remove?
Okay, so, they're still in order, but let me, just double check. 7.3, authorization to hire an administrator to oversee the pre-kindergarten program. 10.17, technology links. Let me make sure it's still 10.17 here. Yes, technology link staff. 10.36.
Can you just slow down? I'm sorry, Leslie.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Said 10.17.
17. Approval of technology links staff for 2017-2018 school year. Tell me when you're ready, Rick.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, 10.36.
Say numbers again.
10.36.
36. Creation of a clerk position, buildings and grounds.
Correct. Then I'll make your life easy. All of 11. So it's 11.1 through 11.10. Tell me when you're ready.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
12.4, approval of the use of the gym in the field at Davis Middle School.
Can you please practice?
13.1, 2, 3, and 4. And, yeah, we're good.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay, so, let's proceed with the, rest of the consent agenda.
Okay. Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
Second.
Trustee Saunders. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Do you want me to go down, go straight down? I didn't, just so everybody knows, I did not move them, I just marked them on here as their consent, not action. I'm sorry, their action, not action consent. All right, 7.3, motion to hire an administrator to oversee the pre-kindergarten program.
Right, I'd love to have some clarity on that.
I'm sorry, we need a motion. and a
Oh,
second.
motion, motion.
Trustee Zamora? Second?
Second.
Trustee McOwen? Okay.
So discussion, love to have some clarity on that, because I know that we have Gail White Wallace, and like to know why we need an extra administrator to oversee the pre-kindergarten program. Like, where do they fit in, and why is it necessary?
That's a stipend for Dr. Gail White Wallace.
Okay, so this is on top of her salary?
That is correct, it's a stipend position.
And, so, is there any backup on this? I don't see any backup on this. Do we know how much it is?
Yes, it is,
Yes,
10
backup.
hours a week, for the school year.
Things are loading. That's a pledge allegiance.
At her contractual rate.
Okay, you know what, yeah, a little glitch here. All right, thank you, Micah. All right, so, Dr. Hamilton, if you may, can you just please explain the whole process and why we need a stipend on top of a salaried position in terms of what is the duties of the salaried position as vis-a-vis the stipend position? I'm a little confused, that's all.
Her job title is to serve as the standards administrator for ELA. The pre-K program and oversight of the implementation of the program is above and beyond what she was initially hired to do. Eventually, we will need to hire a full-time person for this position, quite frankly. Dr. White Wallace has been overseeing this at her negotiated contractual hourly rate. I do think we will need to transition her out of that moving forward as the program expands, but these are duties that are above her job description associated with what she was hired to do. We're getting a bargain at having her do it at $19,000 versus hiring a full-time person, which she's been doing for the last 2.5 years.
And so my question to you is, I mean, is it a bargain or is it not? Based on the fact that if she's doing more of this, and she's doing less of her contractual duties. I mean, you know, are we, in a sense, creating a disservice to ourselves by not, let's say, having someone else, as you said, for this particular position?
I have no indication that that's the case, particularly because of the fact that her work around ELA is directly related to some of the results we've seen earlier. I have no indication that her regular job is suffering. These are duties that are above and beyond that work day. And it has worked well. This recipe has worked well for the last almost 2 years. So I do think as the program expands, we have to think about another alternative. But I think for this school year, she's already demonstrated her capacity to manage both duties and do both well.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Is there a waiting list for pre-K?
There is a waiting list, yes.
We still don't have enough space for it.
Correct. And like I said, she's been exceptional.
Yeah, she's great.
Was it the number, was it 300 kids in pre-K earlier on the report? I don't remember.
That's our full-time, the number of students we're able to offer full-time.
Right now?
Right.
And what will it be next year, do we know approximately?
When we go full day, we're anticipating to be about 600.
Double what it is now?
Yeah.
Okay, should we vote
We
on
can
it?
vote on that,
Take a
yes.
vote.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries.
10.17.
10.17, approval of technology wing staff for the 17-18 school year. Motion, please. Motion. Trustee Saunders, second. Trustee McOwen.
So on technology links, let's see here. Can someone, I don't know if Joe McGrath is here or not, or maybe Dr. Gorman, maybe you could explain exactly what that is and what our contractual obligation is going to be.
So it's a position that was put in a couple of years ago. It's building-based teachers that are savvy with technology and are able to help their colleagues during their off time or prep time, and it's a minimal stipend to lend building-based supports from colleagues, both instructionally and in addition to the regular technology support.
So these are employees of the district
They're
already?
teachers, yep.
They're teachers, okay, in each building?
Yep.
So one in each building, that's the sort of like
We
coordinator?
set them up with professional development, we meet with them regularly, and they would help other colleagues with like Office 365, or sometimes little stuff like turning on a printer or logging onto a computer, things that if you ask the technology staff is a much more arduous process.
Got it. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm ready for a vote.
Second.
We already have a motion and a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Next one is
3-6.
creation of a clerk position in the Buildings and Grounds Department. Motion?
Motion.
Trustee Saunders.
Second.
Trustee White. Discussions are over.
Okay. And this one, it seems as if we were challenged, Mr. Silver and Mr. Felicio, in the purchasing department. And so now we're moving someone from the purchasing, I believe, department to the buildings and grounds. Can you please just explain that movement and why you feel that that's necessary?
Sure.
You're talking about the position, not the person, right?
Well, no.
Position. No podium? Oh, there it is.
It's an HR registration.
Mr. Zamora, just clarify your question for me, please.
The question is, why is the position being moved from the purchasing department over to the buildings and grounds?
Okay, that's an appropriate question. That's okay.
So when that position was held by a temporary worker, and when and the position was hired for buildings and grounds, but they needed help up in purchasing, so the person that took that position initially started up in purchasing, and then once that position was being, we now switched it. So now the person that we hired came down to us, and the temporary person is up in personnel, up in purchasing.
So what's the function of that position exactly? I know you have two other ladies in, or positions in facilities that appear to have the same role, or is this role specifically different?
Yeah, so her particular role, or that person's particular role, is just to be the liaison to the purchasing department. So it's all the recs, all the invoicing, all the receivables and payables. So it's a vital role. And then we have an inventory person who's now handling facilities, and then we have a receptionist that handles all the incoming stuff that's just.
So this is not a new FTE, it's a switch.
It was a temporary worker, but so FTE?
Full-time equivalent, I'm sorry.
Yes, okay, so yes, it is a new person replacing a temporary person.
Understood.
And this was in the budget for this particular person in this department?
Yes.
And,
That was all
go ahead.
budgeted. But it's a position we didn't have before. So we found that we were having a great deal of difficulty in the coordination between the facilities department and the purchasing department. And one of the biggest problems that we've had is that it is the invoices getting up to us in purchasing for accounts payable, and the invoices being properly processed in the facilities department, which is the most difficult part of the purchasing process for us, because we're so often dealing with contracts, with state contracts, with government contracts, and that Con Ed is a perfect example of the problem that we've had. And so now it is working far better with this person moving. So So she started out in the purchasing department and she moved down to facilities, and she understands both. That's working well.
So she's already started?
Yes.
She was employed, she just reassigned to us.
She was already a permanent employee, just reassigned.
Right, but she was a temporary before.
No, she was hired off a competitive list as a permanent.
Also, she was a permanent employee in the purchasing department. So what were you guys doing before? So now that she's playing this functional role for you, how are you getting invoices up to purchasing before this? I mean, for years before this.
It was not going well, but since she had a knowledge of the purchasing department, now moving her to facilities has made the process much easier for us by having her down there dealing with it. And before that, just before she moved, we were able to resolve the problems we had in the purchasing department. As a result, we had a big backlog, and she was able to help us there. Then she moved down to facilities to continue the process of making everything be smoother for us in the purchasing department. The auditors had suggested that, and we followed through with that.
Yeah. And how many employees are there now in the facilities department in terms of the facilities office that function as a function of the department? Three. So one is the one you mentioned to answer the phones?
So there's a receptionist, she handles all incoming calls, she handles the dispatching to the maintenance people and she handles all the School Dude stuff. School Dude is the proprietary software that we use for our maintenance program. It's our maintenance software. Then we have the invoicing and the liaison to the business office. She does all the invoicing, all the purchasing, all the recs, all the receivables, and some ordering. And then we have an inventory specialist and also doubles as the facilities person who now anybody who wants to use a facility goes through her. So these are vital positions. It is my knowledge that prior to, years ago, there was even more support staff doing the same task. So we've streamlined it, and it's working it's working really well.
Okay, very good. That answers my questions. We're ready to complete the motion.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. 11.1, the treasurer's report. Motion? Trustee Saunders? I hear Mr. Miller.
Second,
Discussion.
All right. Mr. Silva, are you prepared to discuss the treasurer's report?
Sure.
Okay, great. And by the way, one of the reasons I pulled all of the items and facilities is because as we have some residents who are very concerned with the things that happens in facilities, since also the president is very concerned about all the things that happens in facilities, since people want a little bit more clarity as to all the events that happen in facilities, I figure that it's best that we pull all the facilities items and discuss them in the open so that there's air of transparency and that we kind of reduce the rumor mill and the accusations being made throughout the district.
What's your question, sir?
Yeah, so regarding the treasurer's report, what's the significance of it? Could you please explain to the public in terms of why it's on the agenda?
It's every month. It's a snapshot. This is for the month of July of this year. It's a snapshot of the revenue and expenses of all the funds: the general fund, cafeteria fund, that being the school lunch fund, special aid fund, and the capital projects funds. It's just a snapshot of what we've spent and taken in during the month.
Got it. And in terms of as it relates to tax collection, how many periods do we collect taxes, or does the city, submit receipts to us?
Well, we collect generally 4 times a year, but there's also a catch-up of taxes that haven't been paid. When they receive taxes that are in arrears, they get them to us. They have 2 years, as you know, to make us whole on the taxes, although we have to pay out the library money right away. So if we're short money, we have to lay out the money for the library, but they have 2 years to make us whole.
Okay. All right, very good. Any other questions, anyone on this, on the transfer? No? All right, we're ready.
Excuse me a second. I discovered an error, and I'm not sure what number it is because I can't get to it. In the revenue status, I would like to withdraw that to the next meeting.
You don't know what the number is?
Which number?
No, I don't know.
The budget status report?
Yes, I'm sorry, budget status report. So we'll do that on the 5th.
No, just a vote. All those in favor of accepting the treasury report?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Yes. No, to 11.2. Is it 11 point, is it the budget status?
That's
report?
11.2.
Yeah, that's the one.
And what's the error that you find in it?
I see an error in the revenue portion of the, I'm having trouble reading it. In the revenue portion of it, there's several parts of it. It's the revenue one that I see mistaken.
Right, which one
Okay,
specifically?
well, he said it was wrong, let's do it 11.3.
It's what?
You said it, you were gonna pull it, right?
Yes.
It's 11.2.
Well, I'd like to fix it before I discuss it as a problem.
Okay. That's fine.
11.3 approves Peter and Camille and Sons change order number 1 for Graham Elementary Science Room renovations, SCD number 66090001000901. Motion. Trustee McDonald? Second. Trustee Saunders?
So can you please explain this expense for $13,412.61 for Chameleon Sons? I believe this is this regarding Graham Science.
Graham Science Room?
Is it? I don't know.
Yes, it is. Michael will help you a little bit.
Oh,
with
yes,
this,
it
but
says
one of the
that.
things was that there was a change made on site in the way the shades were covering the windows. There was a change made on site on the
Whiteboards.
whiteboards.
There's a change made on site on the whiteboards, and the windows.
In the windows, and there was also something that was discovered in they had to make a repair of something that they discovered in opening up a wall.
Right, so there was a plumbing repair inside a wall. These were just-
Window change from DBL double hung to emergency exit.
Right.
Additional materials and shades. When I was in there, the shades were pretty complete. Did we have an additional window?
There was a change from covering a single window with a shade to covering 2 windows with a single shade. And that was an additional expense. That was an on-site change by this district architect.
Okay. And was it because it was missed on the plan?
It was not missed on the plan. It called for single shades, and he had decided that the double shade would look better than the shade covering 2 windows. Am I?
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, I'd like if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind pulling this and having the district architect here to explain that decision in more detail if we're unsure if that's the exact
We're
reason.
not sure, but we're happy to have that.
Yeah. So,
The district.
so I'd like to table that.
The district architect left.
Yes.
Was he not there when you guys had this discussion?
I'm confident that it's accurate, what we just said.
So can we just let it go?
Well, I wouldn't mind to table it and have him give us an explanation. I mean, since we're here for transparency and we're here to discuss the items, I don't want to sweep it under the table. I want to make sure that we know the reasons for the changes. So, in his own words, is it just because it looked good, or is there a real significant functional reason for that change? So until we could find out, so that residents don't have to foil information.
We'll just make a motion to see if the other trustees agree.
Well, we can just table it.
So this is for payment, right?
This is paying something that
So
was
this
long
work
done.
is done.
Oh, so the work is done, like, it's already done.
I understand the
And we
work is
pay the
done.
contractor.
No, I understand. Well, I mean, so why are we approving it now? What's the point of even having it here if it's already been paid?
Well, it's pretty typical for us to have change orders approved after the work is done. The board has approved.
Okay,
everything.
so that is a practice. Okay, I just wanted to know. All right, so if that's the case, I would still like to know, again, for the sake of the audience and everyone in the district for transparency reasons, that we know why these changes were made. So if everyone else doesn't mind, I wouldn't mind tabling this and bringing it on to the next, especially if the work is done already, there's no hurry.
There's a motion on the table to approve the resolution at this point. In order to move forward, another motion, this is the primary motion, and that would supersede a motion to table. So we'd have to take a vote on this motion, or the person who made the original motion and second would have to rescind their motion and second, which would then would give you the opportunity to introduce the motion.
The work is already done, I said we just need to vote on it. So I need a motion to vote on it. You have a second?
Well, the second was already Micah, so he had
That was the
to.
motion. But are there other similar things that we're going to pull for the same reason?
There's nothing else like that.
So that's a call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain?
I'll say no.
Motion does not carry.
So this change order is going to get paid.
So, Mr. Silva, can you speak to this in regards to work completed, invoice due? Is there a possibility of accruing interest?
No, there's no possibility of accruing interest. This is work done, it was changed on site. We've told you really everything there is to say. So we'll get a response from the district architect.
So this is just stalling payment?
No, we'll get a response from the district architect. Okay, so that will be, can we have him prepare that?
That's all, just a response to, his own words to know why these changes were made. I mean, I remember receiving documentation from Mr. Silver that, Madam President, that you requested in terms
Okay,
of
so
the
let's
change
move-
orders in the district.
Let's move on to the next item.
Okay.
You said 11.4?
11.4, general funds transfer, I need a motion. Motion. Trustee McGowan?
Second.
Trustee Saunders? Discussion.
Discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Silver, if you don't mind, again, similarly to 11.1 with the treasurer's report, just explain to the public, why we need to approve the general funds transfers and what's the significance of that.
My office, I'm permitted to make, superintendent's permitted to make transfers having to do with anything in salaries. These transfers, what would you like to know about the transfers?
Well, just why specifically you need the transfers, and for example, just give me an example of some of the places you would move money from salaries to other departments.
Okay, we did not do that here. Here we moved, the first one was moving some workbooks to increase the textbooks line for parochial school textbooks, since there's an increase in parochial and charter school textbooks. The second one was to fund from materials and supplies to take care of a trailer expense at the Board of Education. The third one was where we had extra money in transportation for the Mandela students to BOCES, and we moved that to contracted services to pay for the elevator repairs. And the last one was for furniture for Ms. Bickler at Pennington School. We moved money from her materials and supplies to cover some furniture for the school, since she was a new principal in the building.
If I could just say, just to explain to the public, this is reflective of a policy that we updated at Mr. Silver's request about 8-9 months ago or something.
Trustee McGowan, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. The way that, can't win. The way this policy works is, we have a budget, there are line items within the budget. We all as a board approve the budget, and we approve the line items, and things change from month to month and week to week. And there are certain smaller changes within line items that the administration is able to do without the board's permission. And there's other medium-sized ones that they can do and then tell us about it afterwards. And then there's larger ones that they have to get our approval for. Is that accurate, Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Right. So this is just, I think this is on every month, more or less, this same motion, and that's the reason for the agenda item.
Thank you. So regarding the trailer, it says the remaining trailer for the 2017-18 school year. Is that trailer now gone? Is that the last payment for the remaining trailer?
No, that's some old payments for the trailer and covering us until that trailer can be gone from the Ed Center.
So this payment of $26,736 is for the remaining school year, so there's no other payment besides this $26,736?
Correct.
All right, and how much is the monthly payment on the trailer?
I'm not out of the top of my head.
Would it be the remaining months divided by the 26?
No, we're not sure how many months we need it. We need to wait until the Ed Center is finished. This is just to cover us so we don't have to do it again. But as soon as the lower level of the Ed Center is finished, that trailer is gone. And then there'll be no more trailers here.
Okay, so you're confident that this trailer would be gone by the end of the 2017-18 school year?
It should be gone before Christmas.
Okay, and our total expenditure would be not to exceed $26,736?
It will not be that much, assuming we can finish the lower level.
All right, I'll just note that. Looking for $26,736, not to exceed. All right, thank you. We could move forward on that if there's no other questions on that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. 11.5, authorizes BOCES contract with Southern Westchester BOCES, Lower Hudson Regional Information Center, Room to Yoga, Southern Central Information Center, and various cross-contracts with other BOCES named.
All right, this one I could definitely, certainly use an explanation on that. Obviously, there's a large number.
Motion.
Oh, motion, yes.
Trustee Mormon, motion, seconded by Trustee McCollum.
Okay, so 21 million, is that our BOCES budget for the year, or is this for the quarter?
This is for the year. This covers all of the BOCES transactions that we have. Can you read that resolution again, please?
Authorizes BOCES contracts with Southern Westchester BOCES, Lower Hudson Regional Information Center, Broome to Yoga, South Central Information
Okay,
Center.
that's good. So this is all the centers that Broome Tioga provides information, computer services for our cafeteria fund for the, so that expense doesn't come out of the general fund, it comes out of the cafeteria fund. Southern Westchester BOCES covers almost all of the special education costs. That was Lower Hudson. So this is the various, we have a binder which shows all of the BOCES contracts and all of the BOCES expenses. We do make that available to the board. It is complete, intact in the business office right now.
Okay. Is there any technology in this, or is this just BOCES
This
services?
includes everything. BOCES, Southern Westchester covers the technology.
Lower Rick is the predominant technology component.
Lower rec, okay, I see that. Okay,
So that's
got it.
the
So
special
that's
ed
about,
and the technology.
that's about 5 million in technology. Now, as I understand, before we had BOCES providing technology for the district, we had outsourced the services to another provider. As I understand that BOCES, some of their technology and their technology personnel are not really up to date with some of the latest and most efficient technologies out there. Have we done a technology audit to recognize and why, what's out there, what could be better, and why are we still using BOCES if that's the case? I mean, at point blank, they've said that the BOCES, most of the BOCES stuff is outdated, and that we're using technology from about 10 years ago when we go with BOCES.
Who says that?
These are technology experts that I've spoken with, who are familiar with school districts and BOCES and other.
I think one of the things you're referring to is Custom. Custom was another company that we're using. Lower Rick has scooped Custom up, so they've become provider of other districts. So it's not per se the Lower Rick that's providing it. They are now becoming the entity that is grabbing all the best practices. So Custom is no longer through Custom is through Lower Rick.
So Customs is now part of BOCES?
I wouldn't call them part of BOCES, but Lower Rick subcontracts with them and places them in other districts because of actually our needs. That changed their practices a couple of years, last year.
Gotcha, okay.
Sub-loss of services.
Yeah, well, I didn't realize that Custom was now subcontracted out by BOCES. Okay.
They do their own work as well, but for the school districts in this area, they have adopted Custom, and that was part of the problem that we had a couple years ago, because Custom felt like they were in competition with Lower Rick, so they're actually sabotaging each other while they were on site. And once Lower Rick scooped them up, then it became a partnership, and they didn't feel like they were competing with Lower Rick.
And why do we need both?
Different services, different supports provide different supports for different things, whether it's our help management desk, or some of our software programs, or some of our computer softwares, or the actual devices, whether they're laptops or desktops or whatever. There's a multitude of different services that we get, whether depending on the academic program or depending on the different technology.
And additionally, we're encouraged by the state to increase our shared service relationships, and BOCES is one of the entities that the state recommends that we have that shared service partnership with.
And we're probably able higher than any district in the state. And I think I wrote in my report last year, they asked me to be on the advising committee because they said our ideas are so progressive that they want to share it with the 4 different BOCES throughout the New York region.
Sounds great. All right, good. That answers my question. Unless anyone else has anything else, we could move on. Well, the motion's on the floor already.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. 11.6 approves an increase in lunch rates for elementary and secondary students for the 2017-2018 fiscal year. Motion? Trustee McGowan?
Second.
Trustee Zimmerman? Discussion?
All right, can you please explain to us why this increase was necessary for the elementary and secondary students in terms of lunch?
It's required by state law that we increase it. We did not increase it. I think it's only a 5-cent increase in the past 2 years.
10.
And, I think, isn't it 5 for one of the?
Is it 5 and 5?
So it's, so this is required. We do not have a choice in order to remain a part of the National School Lunch Program and get our aid.
Okay, and
This is
in
lower than-
the dollar amount, the $2 and $2.35, is that per student?
Yes.
And is that just for? Now I don't understand the whole rate thing. So what does that mean? So it's $2.35.
Full lunch, which consists of 5-piece lunch.
So if I'm a student who's paying for lunch, a 5-piece lunch, I go up to the counter, I'm only paying $2.35?
Right, and you must take 3 of those 5 items. They have to offer you all 5, but you're required to take 3 of them, and it's $2.35. And then we get our reimbursement because that happens. And keeping in mind that over 80% of our kids get free and reduced lunch. So this revenue helps us, but it's also required by the state.
So is the $2.35 the reduced lunch?
No, that's the full price lunch.
So what would be an example of the reduced lunch?
I don't know if we have the reduced lunch prices there.
Well, is free and reduced one, or is it free and or reduced?
So it's either $2.35, or it's nothing, or it's the reduced price, which is, I think, $1 or something like that.
Okay, for those. And is that why we have, we're challenged in terms of trying to change the menu to a healthier menu? Is this particularly the reason why? A, because we're only paying $2 for it, and B, because it's required by the state?
Remember, that's what they're paying. We get very generous subsidies in food, products, and dollars to run our lunch program. So we get commodities every month from the government, totaling several $1 million a year. We order those commodities. The quality of what we're serving is our own choice. There's no prohibition of changing the menus, but we do have to comply with the federal guidelines in order to get the aid. That's not to say we could not have GMO-free foods if we wish to, or a healthier meal. But we've often found that the quality of what we get is not the greatest because the government commodities are not always the greatest quality. But it is healthy food. It is not expired food. Well, we've had some cases of that, but in general, it's not. And the key is to have a good chef and to have a good operating program. We have a chef that we're very pleased with. We have a new director of the
Mr. Silver,
program.
can you restrict your answer to the specific question, please?
Well, the other thing is that, I mean, Trustee Giroux stepped off the Wellness Committee because she said that she could no longer serve since there were so many restrictions in her, and your hands, the district's hands were tied as it related to healthy school choice, lunch choices because of these policies. So now you're saying, no, they're healthy and there's plenty of choices, and all depends on our chef.
No, it depends on our choices of what we buy, but we are not restricted. We are restricted in certain cases by the state to have certain types of foods, but the quality of the foods and the selection of the foods, we see other school districts with very good lunch programs. Ours is getting better.
So why do you think Trustee what was her frustration, do you think, on the Wellness Committee? No, I mean, you sat on the committee with her, so maybe she shared it with you. I mean, if you don't know, you don't know.
I was not at the committee meetings for the most part.
No, yeah, maybe he knew that we could have solved it, but if you don't, that's fine. We could ask her. That's fine. All right, we can move on. We have to vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. 11.7, accept a donation for the boys basketball team. Motion?
Motion.
Trustee McGowan, second. Trustee Saunders. Discussion?
That is probably from Coach Semino, but you could say a word about it.
I do not know what the resolution is.
Okay, 11.7, accept the donation for the boys basketball team.
Principal Gonzalez submitted that.
Okay.
It's what?
It's from Principal Gonzalez. Okay, no problem. We can go ahead and vote on that.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. 11.8, authorization for Fuller D'Angelo to proceed with the Mount Vernon High School concrete repairs and pool finish.
I had 11.9. Did you
That's what I
change
had
that?
as well. There is no 11.8.
It's 11.8 on
It's 11.9 on the agenda, right?
well. So, I,
Just read the rest.
That's the resolution.
be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby authorizes Fuller and D'Angelo Architects to proceed with the Mount Vernon High School concrete repairs and pool finish in an amount not to exceed $28,500.
Motion.
Trustee Zamore? Second. Trustee McGowan?
All right, so the discussion on this one is that we have a proposal by Fuller and D'Angelo, the architects that have been working on the pool, to move forward with the next phase of the pool reconstruction, which is partially to the replacement of the concrete slab at the deep end, repairs to existing slab cracks and deterioration areas, removal and infill of sidewalls, of the vision portholes, waterproofing repairs to existing corner and control joints and existing pool shell, which is I guess the shallow end, waterproofing of existing concrete shell, and installation of new cementitious pool finish. So if you look at the bid document, which I believe is, okay, it's going to be another resolution. It's the next one. If you look at the bid documents, there's a base bid for the work as I just stated, and there's another bid for replacing also the shallow end. The question is, how do we know which one we have to do? I mean,
I don't want to interrupt, but
Sure.
that's the next agenda item. That's not this one.
well, here's how it relates to this one. It's because it's in regards to the architects, right? So the architects are making a recommendation here, or they're going to be working on these plans to submit. Well, I guess they did it already because we have bid documents, right? So this is their fee related to the work that they did. So how do you move forward, not knowing which one you're doing? Are you doing what's going to be the trigger? Do they have here, or do we know? What's the trigger to know if we're only replacing the deep end, or if we're replacing the shallow end as well?
So
What's going to trigger that?
The recommendations from the engineers and the architects involved was that we also do the shallow end, because the shallow end, if we don't do it, there's a question that was raised by the district architect as to whether the old material and the new material would bond together properly from one concrete to another, and also whether the concrete that is 50 years old in the shallow end would be sufficiently strong because, as we've all said, including you, we can't have this go wrong, that we have to get this right. And so all parties, including the engineers that Fuller and D'Angelo had, recommended that we do this alternate of $122,000 to do the shallow end as well. So that brings that whole bid up to $765,000, and their fee of $28,500, I think, represents a 4% fee on that work.
So I'd like to just add one thing. So the existing end with the shallow end was poured at 2,500 PSI, pounds per square inch. The shotcrete that we're going to use in the deep end is 7,500 PSI. So the difference in the two, the pool contractors are having trouble warrantying their work now if there's the compromise at that pool joint, at the expansion joint, or in the shallow end. So it would be prudent to take out that shallow end, make them the same PSI throughout the entire pool deck, and therefore the integrity of the pool will be intact and the warranty will be intact.
Yeah, I remember when we did walkthroughs, the shallow end, it visually looked intact, but that obviously is a different question than what's it made of.
They would have had to chip out all the cracks
Of course.
that were there. This way, they're just going to take it out and resurface the whole thing with one material, deep end and shallow end.
And have they resolved the issue of the caving that was underneath the deep end?
Yes, this part of this.
Is it include this includes the
all
fill
those
and
repairs, yes, the fill, the repairs, and then the sealing of the whole thing. After it's compacted down, they pour the new concrete.
it'll be a single basin.
That's correct.
Right, one pour.
And so, yeah, I do recall that there was a original bid out for just the deep end, and then it was halted, and then I guess a couple of days later put back on. That's the note I received from the engineers, or maybe it was a discussion in the capital projects meeting, to include now the larger scope of replacing the entire slab.
Right, it wasn't halted, there was just an alternate put into the bid document.
Right, okay, an alternate, right. So, but basically they halted the first bid because the bid was supposed to be released, I think, on a Monday, and they held it a couple of days.
A couple of days. So
Right,
they moved
okay.
that.
All right, so did he answer your question, Mr. Zumwalt?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a very large project, and so basically, I just want to get a little historical data here. So the district architect raised concerns. I guess the architect, Fuller and D'Angelo, who was working on this, he concurred. They concurred.
I think it was the other way around.
It was the engineer.
The engineer raised the concerns, the district architect agreed, so did Fuller and D'Angelo. That's.
Okay, okay, all right, so fine. So I feel, I just want to be certain that everyone's in agreement here that this is the way we move forward, because this is about to cost us a lot of money and we can't go wrong here. So right now, this is it. So we're doing the whole thing, but now, all right, well, the next one is regarding the next, yeah, we could go ahead and vote on this, that's fine.
So we have a motion on the floor. Second?
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Abstention?
Oh, sorry. Trustee Zimmer abstains. Motion carries. Next one, authorization to award general construction to Nuberto Construction, Inc. at Mount Vernon High School. Specification number B18-11 MVHS Pool Concrete Repairs and Finish SCD 660900011017
Motion. Second.
Trustee McOwen, trustee Zimmer.
All right, so this one is $765,000 is the award to Norberto. Could you please explain, so what does that encompass? So it encompasses the removal of the of the shallow end as well. All the resurfacing with the shot creek that needs to be done with the pool. And does that include tiling of the lanes?
Yes, it does. Includes all the finishing, everything on the inside of the basement.
What about the deck area around?
That's not related to this.
Okay.
Okay, because for some reason, why did I see that, so basically, all these are not alternates, we're doing all the alternates, basically.
Well, there's
Alternates 1, 2, and, well, base bid alternates 1 and 2.
No, we're not doing number one.
We're not doing number 1.
Oh.
There's a contingency of $50,000 that you may be thinking about as an alternate. It's not. It's a
No, it's
contingency.
7,000, alternate, it says $7,000.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's the installation of the ceramic, which I thought. So that all adds up to the 765, because I haven't done the math on all that. Just want to make sure that everything is in here, because I don't want to have to go back where we come back and say, well, that wasn't included, and now we're going to have to do that again.
All right, so the $7,000 is for the ceramic tile inlay,
Right.
lane markers, and warning lines. And then we have the other one with the shallow end,
Which is 122.
which is 122,000.
Right.
122,000.
And plus the base bid, which was 593,
Plus the 50,000 contingency.
plus 50,000 contingency. So I have 772 here, and is that the, let's go take a look if that's the resolution.
7,000 over.
From 7,000 over?
Yeah, are we not doing that, the alternate one? It doesn't say we're doing the alternate one.
Let's go back here again.
No, they're saying we did, the one was not, it was only number
Right,
2.
we're not doing alternate
The
one.
Right,
Right.
the letter from Savin recommends not doing alternate 2. Alternate 1, the 7,000.
So the 7,000 is the tiling of the lanes.
Well, it sounds like a special shock absorption or something.
Right, I don't think it's a tile, the lanes are going to be tiled.
It says here, the base bid of this proposal for all work required by the contractor is documented as follows. Hold on, 6,000, hold on. I just saw it, here it is. The contractor shall state the amount to be added or deducted from the base bid to provide furnished and installed labor, equipment, and material required to ceramic tile inlay for all pool lane markers and warning lines in lieu of quartz aggregate plaster finish in accordance with specification, whatever, and as indicated on the drawing, $7,000. So that is for the lane markers. So are we not, or are we getting lane markers?
It says they're not considering the $7,000 as it had more to do with the design rather than the technical aspect of the work. So this work is being done in a different way, and they decided not to spend the $7,000.
Right, the way I read this, we are doing quartz aggregate plaster finish lane markers. Is this an upgrade to the lane markers?
We are not doing the upgrade.
Right.
We're doing the
We're going to
standard.
have lane markers.
Right.
We're just not doing the fancy ones.
I don't see where that's clear to me here. Micah, maybe you could show me. It says
It says the 7,000 is to
be added.
provide ceramic tile inlay and warning lines in lieu of quartz aggregate plaster
Right,
finish.
so ceramic in place
So
of,
they're going to paint the lane lines instead of have a different inlay.
well, that would be quartz aggregate plaster in lieu of ceramic.
You would know, I wouldn't.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, for example, in lieu is in place of, so they're saying that they would provide ceramic tile inlay for all lane markers in place of the quartz aggregate. So maybe this has to be rewritten, because if it was the other way, it would say we're doing quartz aggregate in place of ceramic tile inlay.
So the letter from Savin says they're not recommending it because doing the inlay, ceramic inlay, has more to do with design.
Okay, that's fine, but my concern now is it's not clear on how we're getting our lane markers.
What would you like to have us do?
Get clarification.
So do you not want to vote on this tonight rather than have the pool get going?
We can move forward. We can move forward on the vote, but I would still like to have some clarification.
Sure.
Well, there's gonna be lane markers.
Yeah.
It's code.
Well, we say that, but you know what, in a contractual obligation, someone comes back and says, hey, look, you say, it says it right here that we pulled it out, and that's why we didn't do lane markers, and then now we're going back, after the pool's filled, we're gonna have to empty the water out to get lane markers because we never specified it in the contract.
All right, so what's the outcome?
Let's vote.
We have a motion on the floor?
I trust these guys to ensure we actually have lane markers. I say yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Trustee Zamora abstains.
All right.
Next one is authorization for Milburn flooring bills to replace main gym and physical therapy room flooring at Lincoln Elementary School.
Motion?
Trustee Zamora,
The motion to discuss, correct?
second.
Second, we gotta vote on it.
Second.
Okay, so this is back to the floor over at Lincoln, which we brought up last time, and asked for some clarification on the budget, on how much money we had left for the other projects that we had outlined for the year. And you came up with a number, I believe you sent it in an email of somewhere in the $900,000. And I'd ask you to outline that, basically breaking it down between dollars that the facilities department needs to operate, such as, you know, salt and whatever else, you know, mechanical breakdowns, versus what was really allotted for capital projects. Were you able to get that to us? I noted that in the email you said that you would have it by Monday, which was yesterday.
And this is what I discussed with you about a half hour ago when we were inside, so Dr. Hamilton.
Oh, okay,
is
well,
handing that out now.
okay. So you said you were gonna show me something, so you have that? Oh, okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
So first I would call your attention, no, let me start differently. So this represents the facilities department repair budget for the year. And what's over on the right-hand side at the bottom, in the column is $926,000 is currently unspoken for in facilities. This does not include salaries, but it's just for repairs. Now I'd ask you to take a look at the chart down below on the left-hand side, some examples of things we didn't know about. One of the things you approved tonight was a transfer for elevator repairs of $150,000. We didn't know we were going to have these emergency repairs. We did roof repairs of $100,000.
I'm sorry, before you move on, just so that we don't lose track, I thought the elevator repair money came from the fund transfer and not from this budget.
I just said we just transferred money to pay for, I'm just saying an example of an unanticipated repair. I didn't say it was coming from this money. I'm just trying to explain something else.
All right, no problem. I just wanted to stay clear and not get confused.
And then we have the Grimes chiller is coming from this money. This is, we can't proceed with the construction of the new building at Grimes without having this chiller repaired. It takes care of the air conditioning at the Grimes building. The Lincoln Gym floor, which is the subject of these questions right now, for $84,000. We went to visit it last week, and we saw that the carpeted floor in the gymnasium is about 50 to 60 years old. It's in terrible condition, and all who saw it with me believe that it needs to be replaced. That it's really almost an emergency if a child should be putting their face on that. Another item, which may not be on yours, but is the Williams Playground repair. As a result of the flood, damaged the floor of the playground, and that repair is $52,000 for the floor, just the soft floor of the playground. Those are some examples of things that we don't plan on, but we have to keep money in reserve. Mr. Zamora has asked what we're doing with this money. I would refer you now to the right side of this chart, where we have about $100 million in known repairs that come from the building conditions survey. It was really $144 million, but because of the major work that we're doing in the buildings, we've reduced this to $100 million. And this includes our annual maintenance, equipment that's at the end of its life, emergency uses for all 16 buildings. And if you look at my little timeline, we haven't even started for the year, just the school year from September to June. So we are saying right now there's $926,000, some of which is going to be accounted for by the things that are on the left-hand side in the chart, some of which we don't know. And what we want to do is to take a period of time until after the first payroll, which will be September 15th. We know we need more money in the repair codes. After September 15th, we believe we will have some salary codes that will have extra money, and we are going to ask the board to move that into to increase the repair codes, because it's obvious that some of the things in the building conditions survey that we have not done, this $100 million, we're now actually down to $23 or $19 million that we feel we must do in the near future. Some of these things need to be done this year, and we are going to be coming to the facilities committee, the construction committee, and to the board with a plan to do some of these priority repairs. But we now believe this $84,000 for the gym floor is a priority repair that needs to be done now.
Okay, so I want to just get some clarity on the word repair and the word replace. What would you say is the definition between repair and replace?
Well, I would say in the gym floor at Lincoln School, we are replacing the carpeting with a sport floor. That's a replace.
Okay, that's a replace.
The chiller, I would say, is, since we're getting a new chiller for the air conditioning system at Grimes, that's a replace. A repair could be concrete repairs, that's not a replace. It could be putting in sheetrock.
I got you. I just wanted to be clear, because I know we had a discussion regarding what was repaired and what was replaced, and I believe it was a short board session in the morning, and it was noted that the administration can make repairs without the board approval as necessary. However, how does the policy work with replacement?
Well, in this case, we consider this.
There's no distinction between replacement and repair.
I don't think so.
So if we decide to replace all the auditorium seats, they can just go ahead and do it. We don't need board approval for that. So, so versus repairing them, let's say, sanding them down and refinishing them.
No, what the board approves is the budget. We approve the budget, and we approve expenditures to vendors. If the vendor's already on a previously approved list, and it's already in the budget, then they don't need board approval. If it's already budgeted, but they need to hire some new entity, they get approval. Is that accurate? More or less?
I mean, if we were going to redo the auditorium, of course, we'll bring it to the board, but if we're
A
going
lot of this is, look, you hire good people, and you trust them to do their job, and they're not gonna go spend $6 million without talking to us. But they might go spend, $600 without talking to us.
And again, the
In
reason...
between, there's judgment.
Sure. And the reason I ask this is, again, for clarity.
Let's keep it short.
I don't know what short means. I mean, I'm just getting down.
You answered your question.
Well, I'm sorry, Madam President. I think this is how we got into the earlier altercation, is that I'm in the middle of some points here that are very important, because as you demanded and asked for papers asking for clarity on certain expenditures, so now I'm making these sessions by which we could find clarity, so that you won't have to make demands on these type of papers anymore, so that we could have clarity at every board meeting. We have citizens in the audience here who want clarity on expenditures. Now I must hasten my time and shorten it and not get the clarity that you all are demanding. It wasn't myself that was demanding all this clarity. It was the public and yourself. So going back to this, I wanted to also note that I've just read the past 3 superintendent's confidentials, and nowhere did it mention this emergency at Lincoln School. They mentioned a lot of other repairs and replacements and things like that, but nowhere did it mention the one over at Lincoln School that happens to all of a sudden be such an emergency. The other thing that I don't see here, that I'm quite perturbed, to tell you the truth, is that I've worked on the facility subcommittee for almost a year preparing a budget for this year on a bunch of projects, and none of those projects are listed here as the projects that we had planned on doing with the money that was appropriated for those particular projects.
No, but this doesn't have money that's appropriated for particular projects.
Well, that we had set aside in the subcommittee and say, hey, look, these are projects that we'd like to do based on the fact that we had a certain number that we were working with that we could, allot to capital projects. So I think I think you disrespected me. I think you disrespected my time.
I take offense at that.
Well, I'm just telling you how I feel, so you can take any offense you want. Because at the end of the day, all that work that we did is nowhere, and it's sort of like we're starting from ground zero again.
Trust me, it's on the bubbles.
No, it's not. Actually, no. Trust me. No, it's not. I'm gonna bring you the entire list of all the projects.
But I'm saying, these line items are not for specific projects. That's not how it works.
No, I understand that.
His question was specifically about the floor at Lincoln. Yeah.
Right, well, so I want to know what projects the floor at Lincoln takes away from the projects that we had already allotted for during the year.
I only know of a single project that is on hold, as you well know, the $252,000 for the concrete at the high school. And we said we would wait until, can I finish?
Sure.
We said we would wait until we sorted out everything else. In fact, the floor at the Lincoln School was in the building condition report. One of the things that they said was important to replace.
And so was another $149 million worth of things.
2014.
Right.
And it has only deteriorated further since 2014.
I understand that, and I'm not debating whether it needs to be replaced or not, but I'm debating the process by which we go about. Look, there's $149 million worth of items that were mentioned in the building condition survey. So you're picking one $84,000 carpet of that. That's not even 1%. So again, I'm really looking at the process here in terms of how much time we spent on these projects, and yet that is not, and I will show you, okay, that is not the only project that is on hold. And I don't have it with me now, but trust me, I will have it at the next board meeting to show you the litany of projects that you're not mentioning.
Okay, so let's address the Lincoln floor. Are we going to vote on it tonight?
Yes, we can vote on it.
Motion?
You can vote on it.
Motion?
All those in favor of approving the resolution?
Aye.
Yes. Opposed? Abstain?
Abstention?
Trustee Zamora abstains. Motion carries. 12.4 approves use of the gym and field at Davis Middle School by the City of Mount Vernon Civil Service Department for police practice agility exam. Motion?
Motion.
Trustee Zamora?
Second.
Trustee McOwen?
Okay, so the, probably a question for Mr. Policio, because I don't know, this is another project that wasn't mentioned, since he said, Mr. Silver said the only project that was on hold was the high school paving. Are we moving forward with the reseeding of the Davis lawn over at Davis?
That is a specific line item in the budget, Mr. Zamora. This is only items that are not specific, and yes, we are proceeding.
Okay, so Davis is
There's
specific.
$100,000 in the budget specifically allocated to Davis.
Well, I'm glad you're making that
Sprinkler
clarification.
and the seeding.
Okay, that's fine. And you know what, and I appreciate that, and I'll note that, because it's been very elusive, the entire process. I gotta tell you, we've changed it a million times, so I just wanna write it down here. So specific budget, okay, that's fine. And so we're moving forward with that. So since we are moving forward with that, would the lawn, I see that they're going to be using the property, the lawn. This authorization would give them the ability to use, as it says here,
Saturday.
Practice agility tests.
practice agility test on the fields. So would that be on that field, the soccer field that we just seeded and it has not taken yet, or is that somewhere else?
We haven't even begun the process on the field yet.
Right, so that's what I'm asking you. So when is that process gonna start, in respective to when they plan to use the facility?
Is that germane to the question on whether or not they can use the facility? I'm
Well,
just asking.
well, I mean, is it germane for the football team or everyone else to stay off the high school field because you guys just sodded it and that you're gonna restrict activity till the
Right,
15th?
so if I may, sir, if we had begun the process or finished the process like at the high school, we surely would not be allowing anybody to be on the field, whether it be the civil service people or football team. So right now, if I may, we are, the person from Tri-Turf is finishing up the estimate. They found some irrigation in the field, they're finishing up the estimate. I believe it's there's a budget item for it, so as soon as we get all the estimates in, it's a go. And it won't happen before this agility test, that's for
Okay,
sure.
okay. All right, that's, okay, so that answers that
I
question.
would like to point out several of the things that are in the capital
I
budget.
think that
which-
answers his question, Mr. Silver. Can you just let me know? So we have a motion?
You could tell me after.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries.
Next.
13.1, approval of OCR resolution agreement, case number 02171098.
We actually, I think we can make a motion.
We already have a motion.
Oh, we did a motion on that already? Okay, so we can go ahead and vote on that. I think we explained that in executive session. I'm fine with that. I thought we had a motion already.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. 13.2, authorizes an amendment to an agreement with Mies Gagnon Kapusky. Motion.
Motion.
Trustee Zamore? Second?
Is this on the public agenda, or is this confidential?
It's on the public, if the public, you have to vote on the public.
No, I know, but do they see what we see?
No, the agreement.
Her contract is.
Okay.
It's not, okay, yeah, this is not regarding the contract at all. This is just regarding, just practice.
I just didn't hear a second, sorry.
Oh, second.
Trustee Zamore?
So the practice of, extending contracts beyond the contract dates, is one that, I've noticed that we've been doing for a while. And I'm at this point, and, by the way, does a fantastic job, and I don't wanna single her out, so this has nothing to do with her. The name is public, it's here. The name is here. Okay. But this has to do with the practice of extending contracts before the contracts expire. What's the point of having contractual dates if we're always renewing contracts before the contract expiration date?
Generally, you don't want there to be a gap in services, and we try to avoid that by approving contracts with a continuation date that is in conjunction with the termination or the expiration date of the previous contract.
And so, I'm not looking at the numbers now, but how many months or years is this before that would happen in this particular case?
Her current contract expired August 4th.
Expired?
Expired.
Okay, so this is just a renewal of the contract. Okay, so there is a lapse.
In this case, there isn't. There is a lapse, there's no overlap.
Right, there's no overlap, right.
overlap.
But you were saying that, okay, so, because in general, I've seen a lot of overlap. So, and I understand your explanation for that, so you don't want a lapse which just occurred now.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that was by virtue of the timing of the meetings.
Okay, all right, very good.
Is there an error? It says effective July 1, 2016. Is that supposed to be July 1, 2017?
Yes.
Correct.
All right, so Rick, can you update the correct the year? Okay.
Thank God I pulled it. All right. We're ready to move on and vote on this if you guys are ready.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. 13.3, authorize an agreement with Focus Media Incorporated. Motion.
Motion.
Trustee Saunders, second.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
No, that's correct on that contract. That language is accurate.
Wait.
With
the
their-
resolution.
At the very end, it said effective.
Oh, the resolution.
It was in the
Okay, I thought
resolution.
you were talking about the contract, okay.
Which one are we doing?
Focus, authorizes an agreement with Focus Media.
So, basically, we've had a lot of discussion, well, I've had some discussion with people in the community about PR and marketing of the district. And we have beautiful, amazing shows. Mr. Monroe, you really should try to make the time to see one of our productions. It's just really amazing. It's fantastic, worthy of a off-Broadway show. But yet, sometimes we only have like, a couple dozen people in attendance. So while we have a PR firm that we're spending money on, I just don't see the amount of outreach in the community. So while they may be bringing us, and I'm not sure if they even do, if that's something that Rick McCormick does by calling up FiOS and News 12 and whatever other media contacts, I just don't see how we've been making an impact in the community that we serve in terms of getting the word out of all the things that we're doing. I recall we had the presentation, Dr. Hamilton, that you made over at Graham School with the state of the district. I think there was about 23 people in attendance and 20 of them were administrators in the audience. So how can we justify continuing this contract when when the marketing of the district, of the schools, is almost non-existent in the community?
Rick, as the liaison, if you would just outline the scope of their duties and yours as it relates to media outreach.
Focus Media is engaged as a professional communications company, and together we reach out beyond traditional markets here in Mount Vernon. We engage FiOS 1, News 12. The board, yourself included, have made it a priority to make sure that it's not just people here in Mount Vernon who understand what the changes taking place around Mount Vernon, but also the surrounding community to attract more people into the community. And they're responsible for the newsletters that go out. We send out 4 or 5 28,000 piece mailings each year in terms of getting those notices out to the community. They are responsible for all our web content. We coordinate together to make sure that Evelyn's programs are advertised. And in terms of getting people in the door, I don't want to say it's outside of their scope, but we put it out there under as many different venues as we possibly can. People don't want to take part in it. That's short of going, we've talked about this before, short of going door to door and make jokes about that. We continue to investigate other means to get people involved and get people into the school. We're hopeful that the engagement of our family community engagement coordinator, Michelle Bromley, as well as the parent liaisons will help increase traffic.
And your point, Mrs. Zamora, just to elaborate a little more on what Mr. McCormick is stating, Focus Media fulfills the obligation of their contract. I do think, however, to your point, we need a more grassroots effort, more Mount Vernon-based effort to augment the services and address the needs that you described. But I don't think that is in any way a reflection of Focus Media. I think it's a reflection of the kind of agreement that we have with them, and the needs of our community may be broader than the scope of this agreement.
If I could jump in, I was going to pull this as well, actually. When we did this last year, the Family and Community Engagement Committee had a sit-down with Focus and kind of a powwow on that, and we kind of went through our objectives for the year, and I don't know if we had that this summer. I was not a part of any such thing with them this year, although I personally think they have done a great job within the scope of their services. I would like to, at least for the Family and Community Engagement meeting, have a meeting with them, or even a phone call at least, and kind of just regroup and confirm that we're all on the same page going forward.
I do think we...
And whether we need to either expand their efforts, or maybe hire somebody else, or just, I think what we task them with, They performed very well, and I think that the media is excellent that they got out. They did get us some new contact, I think, outside of Mount Vernon that we didn't have before. And I think, but it's once a year at least is a good time to sit down and make sure we're going in the right direction.
I would agree with that, and Mr. Zamora, I do think that we do need to do more, kind of like the door-to-door service, quite frankly, just short of door-to-door, but someone who is familiar with our community, and I'm actually going to be sharing a proposal with the board at an upcoming meeting on how I think we might be better able to have a liaison that is rooted in the community who can help do that.
Yeah, I mean, and Rick, you mentioned that, well, we get it out there and the community just doesn't show up. And I would argue that the community just doesn't know. I mean, most people who you would ask, you can say, hey, look, do you know about the show at the high school? I know I've texted on many occasions about 200 contacts that I have in Mount Vernon. Hey, by the way, you must see the show. It was amazing, so on and so forth. Please go. But short of that, it's not in the newsletter necessarily, because the newsletter might not be timely. So besides being on the website, unless someone happens to be going on the website, how would someone in the community know? Do you send out flyers?
We send out flyers.
To everybody in the community? Because I'm in the community, I've never received a flyer.
For the shows?
For the shows.
Yeah, I get flyers from the shows. You don't?
And that's an example, that's not in the scope of their responsibilities, but that is a service that we may need to look at how we can provide, to do palm cards, for instance, that may work in our community. It may not necessarily be a mailing, because that could get very expensive, but a grassroots effort that may be folks who distribute those flyers in common areas.
But if we get them already, and we're spending the money already, how come everyone's not getting them? I mean, Rick, you're saying that you do distribute them to the entire community, right?
Our primary, when we send out flyers to the community, they generally go home in a backpack express with the students in grades pre-K through 8.
Okay.
We send out newsletters that go to the entire community. And depending on what the event is, we have done at least one, if not two, broad community-based mailings for larger events. But those things cost money. And that's the, you're talking, there's 28,000 homes in Mount Vernon. So, and that has never been expressed to me as a desire of the board to do more district-wide mailings than we're.
I'm not sure if that's the answer either, but for example, I'll give you something that I think could be a simple fix that could be a very cost-effective media, is to put up, let's say, a large poster or banner in front of every school. And so you're talking about 16 banners. It's cheaper than mailing to the entire community, and so that way, people who are just driving by the school will see the banner. People coming into the school to drop off their kids will see the banner that the show's coming up. And maybe the day of the show, maybe hang some balloons next to the banner, and that way you can get some attention that the day's the day. I mean, I don't know. Look, I'm not a media expert. What I'm saying is that we certainly could make more of an effort, especially if all these students are pouring their hearts out and they're working so hard for 12 people to show up at the show.
They had a great show, the last show that they just did this August, and it was packed from top all the way to the bottom, in the balcony and on the ground floor. It was packed.
All right, I was aware I missed that one, but I'm glad to hear.
It was great. It was a great
All
show.
right. So I'm ready to move on with this, if you are.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I am opposed.
May I, at the pleasure of the president?
I'm sorry, we're in the middle of a vote. 1 second. And I would say no.
Motion does not carry. Trustee Zamora and trustee Micah voting no.
So are we, am I to understand that we are not interested in having Focus Media as our media firm, or are there provisions?
I will speak for myself to say that is not at all what I mean. I would be in favor of putting this on next week's agenda. I just want to talk to them this week. I think you and Michelle and Rick and I and Yak, as the PACE committee, should make sure we're all on the same page with marketing efforts. And if we renew them, I would be in favor of that as long as it's part of a more comprehensive plan. That's all.
I concur with Trustee McCohen on that. I think that if there's going to be a review process, then one of the subcommittees or someone has to be involved in that review process so that we make sure that either they're meeting our needs or maybe we have to expand their scope. Just the same discussion that we just had. But just going ahead and voting on it when we know that our needs are not being met, I think would do us a disservice. So again, I'm not saying that I wouldn't vote on approving them after we get a report back in terms of how we can better meet our needs.
All right, 13.4, authorizes an agreement with the law office of Douglas A. Spencer. Motion?
Motion.
Trustee Zamora? Second. Trustee McCollum?
So my question is this a specialty, attorney that we need because Ingerman Smith does not have the capacity to handle this particular case?
No, this is the case that I've been updating you on in the last two confidentials about conflict of interest, and this is the firm that they are recommending.
Yes. Okay. Okay. I'm fine with that. We can vote. We have a motion already, so we can go into the vote.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried.
Any unfinished business? Any new business?
I know it's late, but yes, I have new business. I want to talk about the names of our buildings, and the names of schools. And we're not going to decide. Oh, mic just cut out?
Not mine. I just shut mine off. Okay, I was getting some.
Cut mine too. Anyway, I'm confused about the process for naming buildings, and it seems like it's been a little ad hoc, which is not to say anything about Mount Vernon. I think it's always an ad hoc process, kind of, when people decide what to name schools. But I know just even in our construction meetings, there's been some confusion about the names of some of the specific buildings. For example, Lincoln, for example, Mandela. Is Mandela still the name of the building, or now that we're moving the Mandela program into Davis, what are we going to call the building? And I don't have any proposals, and then we have the fact, of course, that our high school has no name, and it's the only building in the district, the only school building with no name. Meaning it's not named after some person or something, right? And I would be in favor, and this is part of a larger kind of, I think, discussion about school colors, and now we have uniforms in all the school, and I think we're really doing some great kind of rebranding and unifying of the city. But there are some specific points of confusion, particularly with, was it Lincoln? What's the name on the Lincoln building?
No, it's the guy Columbus.
Oh, Columbus. Columbus is Nichols. Sorry, I keep saying Lincoln. Columbus. So it's understandable as a parent dropping your kid off at a school and you move into the city and you're very confused of what the school's called because the name on the front of the building is different from the name that everybody's calling. And when we're submitting plans up to New York State, some of the plans will show a building, it used to be called something 3 years ago, and then the state still thinks it's called that, and so we just have confusion at some, not all of the buildings, but at some of the buildings, and I think it merits some brainstorming among us as board members and perhaps involvement in the community of trying, and I don't know if this is a hot potato or nobody cares, but to come to a resolution on what some of these buildings should be called and stick to it and stop changing names of buildings.
Currently, the buildings are assigned what's called a beds code, and there's no confusion at the state in terms of how these bed codes are assigned. Now, it is true that some of the signage on the buildings is inconsistent with the inscription on the building, and I can't speak to that because most of that happened before I was here.
Yeah.
But I do think in terms of the process, anyone can initiate a petition to suggest a name change to a building, or the board, for whatever reason, can suggest a name change or recommend a name change. But at the end of the day, it is the action of the board that determines the name of a building, and that name and the configuration of that building is submitted to the state for their information, and the beds code that is assigned to it has to be consistent with the board action.
Okay, then for just for sake of clarity then, with no disrespect whatsoever, meaning to some of the historic names on some of the buildings in this city, I think it causes confusion, and I think that the VED codes for these buildings, either we should decide if we want to change them for some of the buildings, or if we're not changing them, then I think we should cover up the old names, because I think it's really confusing to have Nichols not be Nichols. And I know people I talk to who are new to the city are very confused with some of these buildings. And in particular with respect to Mandela, which does require some thinking on our part of what I mean, we're totally redoing the school. It's going to be a different elementary school. The program, now known as Mandela, will no longer be in that building. So I think we need, and I'm not proposing anything right now, I'm just saying I think we should decide what we're going to call the building and what we're going to call the program so that everyone in the city can speak without confusion among each other. And they know when they're talking about the program, they know what they're talking about. When they're talking about the old building, they know what they're talking about.
And I think that's a great idea, and I would encourage the board to expand that conversation to include school communities.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that they have an input in that process. There is a proposal that I'm not ready to present to the board right now about one of our schools in particular, but I think as we reconfigure our schools and we continue our efforts to rebrand the district, that some of the names of our schools will probably need to be reconsidered. Again, involving the public in that process, particularly the school communities.
Thank you, and I agree. And again, to that point, which I've said this before and I'll say it again, I think it's really weird that the high school is just called the high school. It's not the only high school in the city. We have other high schools, and I don't understand why one of them's called the high school, the other ones aren't called the high school. So my personal opinion is the high school should also have a name, so it's not standing alone and differentiated from the other high schools that we have. But anyway, that's another discussion. But I just want to put it out there, and I think to the people left in the audience at 11:10 p.m., thank you, and welcome your ideas. And for the people watching, if any, let's start a discussion about what some of these buildings should be called, and let's have it be a community process where everyone feels involved and everyone has input, and then let's stop renaming buildings every 5 years. That's my opinion.
And I just want to say that at the construction meeting, they asked us not to change anything because sending information up to CD.
Yeah, I know, that's what caused some of these, because some of the plans got sent up with a name, and the state gets this, and they're like, what is that building? I don't know what this building is, because they have the official name up there.
Right, so to trustee White's comment, which is pretty accurate, I think besides Mount Vernon High School, which we could easily add a name to or something like that, but the names at this juncture, I think maybe the names that we have on most of them, if we already have a name, that maybe we stick to them. Now, one of the things that I said early on is I remember at one board meeting I made a comment that said, imagine if I had a t-shirt that says my name is John. My name's not really John, but I'm wearing a t-shirt that says that, and that's what these schools are akin to. They have a name that's not representative of the name that they are. I mean, there's Washington Junior High School, which is now Nellie Thornton. Edward Williams was once, Trustee White always calls it that, the Fulton, Robert Fulton. And so, yes, when we do change the name, we need to also change the inscription on the school so it doesn't have 2 and sometimes 3 names on the school. I know Graham has at least 2. Clinton, right, DeWitt Clinton and Graham, it's utterly confusing. But anyway, I think administration could mull that over, and I'm in favor of returning Nichols to Nichols and Columbus back to the old Columbus building, which was changed to Mandela, and then Columbus was moved into the Nichols Franco combination building.
I agree, but some of these schools that were changed, I think we have to do a history on why they were changed and the reason.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree, and we should poll the local, community for each of these schools and get people's opinion too. I don't have any dog in this fight. I don't care what the buildings are named.
Just something.
It's really confusing.
Okay.
I agree.
So motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Trustee McGowan, second.
Thank you all for staying so late.
All those in favor?
I'm in favor.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained?